What's up, guys? If you're not subscribed, please subscribe. Also, please smash that like button on the video and enjoy the show.
That trident can really, the power that comes with it, the accolades that come with it, it's not good at times.
What do you mean, brother?
In my opinion, no human being was created to be worshipped by another human being. You know, when you're a SEAL, go to the base that's not the SEAL base, you go to NAB or go to another base and you have that trident on, everybody stops and they look and like, oh crap, like you're a SEAL. And it's like that can build up pride within the person. And there's been guys who, you know, it's been too much power. Even though that's detrimental to that kid can end up dead or in prison. You know what I'm saying?
If I remember this correctly, didn't you say before you went into the military, like you were involved in that?
Yeah, I was
growing up in the Bronx?
Yeah, I grew up in the Bronx. I was a product of my environment. I didn't have a father. My father died when I was 5. We left Nigeria when my father died.
Yeah, you had hold on a second. You had a really unique childhood. Obviously, tragedy in the middle of there too, and you ended up really taking it control of your life and turn into an unbelievable success through your own work, which is amazing. But like, you were really wealthy in Nigeria for like until you were 5, and you had to come here. What happened there? Like, what was your dad's background?
So my dad, he was a genius. He was a visionary, entrepreneur, philanthropist, multimillionaire. You name it, he did it. He was born in Nigeria, left in his late teens. Ended up getting a full ride academic scholarship to study architecture and engineering in London. Got his bachelor's, got his master's, started accumulating his wealth in the West. He was one of the first black men on the board of the World Trade Center in New York City. He was one of the first black men on the board of the British Financial Planning Council in the UK. I mean, the dude was a genius. After a number of years and after accumulating all of his wealth in the West, he decided, I want to go back to Nigeria because Nigeria is rich in resources. You got oil, you got natural gas, you got cocoa, you got gold, you got minerals. As a matter of fact, you got China not going into parts of Africa, not just Nigeria, but other parts of Africa as well, and you know, and buying up land and doing deals with Nigerian governments or property owners and to mine these areas for natural resources. And so my dad, knowing how rich Nigeria was in resources and is in resources, you know, he wanted to create like a Nigerian Wall Street, like an African Wall Street, a financial sector that people from around the world could come to and do business in Africa. And so in the 1970s, he bought a massive plot of land called Marico. It still exists to this day. And that's where he was going to build his Wall Street. He bought it for £8 million. In the 1970s. That's a few bucks. That's a lot of money, yeah. And so that's where he was going to build this Wall Street, essentially. And there was a military coup somewhere around the 70s, 80s, can't remember exactly. I want to say it was the late 70s. And that Marico was taken from him. Fast forward, he went to court with the Nigerian government, fought them, and after the coup subsided, he wasn't going to go fight against a military regime. So after the coup had subsided, he fought against the Nigerian government. In the court system, the federal government said to him, all right, what do you want for compensation? We're not going to give you Marico back. What do you want? Do you want the money back? What is it that you want? And so they settled. And in the settlement, my dad requested a lagoon. It was literally a swamp, but he requested a lagoon. And the Nigerian government was like, a lagoon? What are you going to do with a lagoon? He's like, don't worry about it. Just give me the lagoon. And so what he did was he hired Dutch engineers to dredge the foreshore, create 6 interlinks, and essentially create one of the first man-made islands in Nigeria, which it exists to this day. It's now known as Banana Island, which is pretty much like a Beverly Hills. It's where like some of the richest Nigerians, richest Africans in the world have property on Banana Island. So that's my dad's, that island, my dad created that island.
Wow.
He hired
I'll put that map in the corner of the screen for people to see.
And there should be a story on somewhere. It's a bunch of stories on the internet around it. But
wow, so he built this.
So he built it. He built Banana Island.
How big's the island again? I think you just said that, but
I can't even remember, bro. I can't remember.
Still, like, but, this, all this I'm looking at right here. This is all.
Nah, that's Ikoyi. That's Lagos Island. Bananas.
This whole thing, right? Oh, that looks like a banana. Right. That would make sense.
And here's a crazy thing. It wasn't supposed to be a island with luxury hotels and multi-million-dollar estates or any of that stuff, right?
Click images.
Click images.
Yeah, you'll see like.
Let's see, images. What am I looking for?
I mean.
Oh.
The houses and stuff that's on it.
Yo, Dad was balling.
Yeah, so that's when he started dredging the foreshore and creating the island. That's when I was born. So I was born in '82, and I was born into the riches and wealth. We had nannies, cars, drivers. I mean, you name it. We traveled all over the world. My dad was a multimillionaire. My mom.
And you remember this well?
Not a lot. I mean, I left when I was 5, so I don't remember too much. I remember little things. Like, I remember my dad. I remember the private school I went to in Ikoyi, Lagos. And, I remember some of the people very vaguely. But I had pictures all around. I have pictures in my office and stuff of us on our horse, or with my, dad, one of my dad's fancy cars, and, him, my grandmother traveling in London with her fur coat on, and my dad got her, and all of this other stuff, and pictures of days. As a matter of fact, I remember years later, after my dad died, I found a letter from the White House, Ronald Reagan, that he had written to my dad. You know what I mean? Because my dad was well connected all over the world. So, brilliant man. And so, that's the life I was born into. Fast forward, after the land had formed, and he started construction on the buildings, the Lagos state government, not the federal government, but the Lagos state government came in and said the federal government was never supposed to award him the lagoon. They said that the lagoon belonged to the state. But Nigeria is a very corrupt nation. It's historically been one of the most corrupt countries for the last 40, 50 decades. And they conveniently waited until the land had formed and until construction started, the building, to come in and say, that belonged to us. That lagoon belonged to us.
They just took it from him.
So they essentially took it. My mom, would tell my dad all the time, listen, you need to put money back in the States because I don't trust the Nigerian system. And if what happened to you in the 70s happens again, we're going to lose everything, because my dad had leveraged everything, all his art, our house, millions of dollars. And he would always tell my mom, listen, my priority is Nigeria. Let me get this whole thing set up so that Nigeria can be in a better place. And once it's all set up and we're getting paid rent and all that, then we'll put all the millions of dollars in the U.S. But this is my priority, because he was trying to do something for the people. It wasn't about him doing, he was going to make money, but it was about him doing something for Nigeria. As a matter of fact, the same architect of the World Trade Center was a good friend of his. He architected and created the blueprints for the Twin Towers that were supposed to stand at the center of Lagoon City. His name was changed to Banana Island, right? Because again, he wanted to do something for the people. Anyway, I say all I have to say, he went to court to go fight the Nigerian government again, and he died three weeks later.
How did he die?
So, long story short, a lot more to the stories on my book Transform. I break it down, but the autopsy showed that he was given bad medication. He was bitten by a dog. He went for a walk, super stressed out.
In Nigeria?
Yeah, super stressed out, went for a walk, and that's what he would do to clear his mind. Neighbor's dog on the compound next to us broke free. My dad had done these walks a bunch of times. Never happened. Dog broke free, slid through the gate, bit him. Right? So my dad naturally, he went to the doctors, right? I want to say the next day, and got medication to treat, I think it was supposed to be like anti-rabies, like prophylaxis, I can't remember, but some type of medication. Didn't take the medication right away. Flew to Germany real quick because he had friends and lawyers and stuff in Germany. Did something out there in Germany. Flew from Germany to New York. Was out there for a couple days. And then he went, my mom told him, you need to take the medication. He wouldn't take it. He didn't take it. He's like, I'm gonna wait till I get back home. Gets back to Nigeria, takes the medication, and goes to go take a bath, never comes out. So the medication is what killed him. You just had a
reaction with the...
No, it was essentially poison. Yeah. Because my dad, he was very connected in Nigeria. He was connected to politicians. He was connected to the Oluwolu, which is considered like the king of the Yorubas. He was connected to generals. He was connected to a lot of people. My dad was a very, very driven person. And again, he wanted to create the island because he felt in his mind, if I create something where there was never something, no one could ever come in and say it's mine, because it never existed, right? And so he thought he had bulletproofed this island. He bulletproofed this dream of his. And in reality, there's a saying in Nigeria, if you fight corruption, it'll fight back because Nigeria is so corrupt. And so when they found a loophole and did what they did, they knew that come hell or high water, my dad was going to fight tooth and nail and get it back.
So they killed him.
So essentially they killed him. And my dad's personal security guard to this day is one of the managers of the island. So it wasn't just people outside, but it was people in his circle. So
that guy's still there today.
Still there today.
You feel a certain type of way, like he.
Well, for him to be my dad, there were a lot of people that were after my dad was gone, inside his circle, outside of his circle, that got portions of that island. That got a lot. As a matter of fact, I did a July 4th post that went like super viral on Twitter. It got like, I don't know, like 4 or 5 million views on Twitter. It was like it just blew up. Brad could tell you about it. If you go to my Twitter, there's a post, and I did July 4th post where I shared my dad's story. I didn't share it like to pretty much bash Nigeria or anything like that. I just shared it to kind of tell the story why I'm grateful to be in America because of what happened to my dad. And keep going down.
I gotta go way down. July 13th. You said it's July 4th?
July 4th, yeah. That was a follow-up one.
July 5th, July 4th.
So you click on that post.
You want to read it?
So after, the top part is cut off, right?
Yeah, after completing his bachelor's.
After completing his bachelor's and master's in the UK, he created multiple businesses in the West and generated more wealth than he could have ever imagined. Dad brought all his talents and expertise back to Nigeria with the hopes of creating a World Trade Center, African Wall Street. When I was born in Nigeria, I was surrounded by wealth, servants, opulence, blah, blah, blah. I already covered that. In 1987, let me do that. I was surrounded with service, opulence, loving parent who, despite having it all, modeled the importance of hard work, never being a victim, and never being satisfied with mediocrity. In 1987, the Nigerian government illegally and corruptly stole all of my dad's assets, including his man-made island that's now worth billions and was renamed Banana Island. While fighting the Nigerian government in court, he mysteriously died weeks later. We went from rich to poor overnight. My mom brought me and my brother to America. It wasn't easy, as we literally started from the bottom of the Bronx. My brother and I applied what our parents instilled in us at an early age. Despite a plethora of mistakes, I made it. Despite a plethora of mistakes I made, we both became very successful. Without the opportunities America has afforded my family, I'd be nothing. Yeah, America isn't perfect. We have our issues just like every other country on the planet, but America is one of the handful of places in the world where you can start with nothing, put in the work, and end up at the top. I love this country, and I'm not ashamed to say it. And the moment I feel otherwise, I'm going to pack up my stuff, teach my kids a new language, and seek life elsewhere. With that said, happy Independence Day, July 4th. And so the if you go down, it's like 4 million views, right? The comments, dude, that I got tens of thousands of comments, right? Most of them from Nigerians.
And what'd they say?
All kinds of good stuff. They were just like, "Oh my God, we didn't know that you were the son of Chief Adebayo Adeleke. You are his son," because I was in this movie called Plane, and so I remember when
with Gerard Butler,
yeah. And when Plane came out, I was getting a lot of Nigerians hit me up like, "I saw your name in the credits." I was like, "This is a Yoruba, this is Adeleke," and then so they knew me from the film, a lot of Nigerians, and then when I posted this, they was like, "We didn't know that this was your dad, the Chief Adebayo," because my dad's like a legend in Nigeria, right? And there's tens of thousands of comments and retweets and all that. And one thing that was, the point I'm trying to make here is that there were a bunch of Nigerians who said the current president of Nigeria lied to us. We've always known that he was lying about the origins of Banana Island, because he was the senator of Lagos. when my dad in 1987.
Now you were 5 years old.
I was 5.
Okay.
Yeah.
So how'd you find out your dad died?
My mom. So I remember, I'll never forget the moment. We was sitting on this like red, it was like a couch / chair because it was about this wide. My mom put me on her right side, my brother on her left, and she delivered the news in such a calm way. She was just like, "Hey, your dad's died, and he's not coming back." And it wasn't that she was being cold and stoic. I asked her about it years later, but in retrospect, I could say that she knew that she had to keep it together, so that we can keep it together. Because if she was, falling apart and crying and screaming, then we would fall apart, crying, screaming, and it would just create this never-ending cycle. And she said it in such a calm way that right after that, me and my brother looked at each other. We said, "Okay," and we went back to playing with our toys.
You also,
we were young.
You don't have
we don't have a concept of that. And on top of that, my dad traveled a lot for work. So to us, it was like, oh, he's just going on another business trip. Because we didn't understand death. But also, I think a big part of it was her delivery. Because if she was hysterical and crying, it's like, one of the key lessons we learn in combat is when you're in the combat situations, if your leader is like frantic and going crazy in the midst of a firefight, like, "Oh my God, I don't know what to do." Yeah. We have a saying in our community, calm breeds calm. Right? But if you have somebody that, like a leader at the top that's freaking out, don't know what to do, somebody will eventually like jump in and fill that void. Be like, "Shut up, all right, you get over there, you cover down on that door, you get up there, you get on the phone with the bird." But for the most part, like there might be an instant where everybody else can be in disarray. And that probably doesn't apply to soft units, but I would probably say, like, let's say infantry units, like especially like infantry unit that has a lot of young privates in it, right? If you're looking at that leader and that leader's falling apart, chances are you're going to fall apart. But if you're looking at a leader in the middle of the shitstorm, like he's keeping it together, you're gonna be like, "Cool, let's rock, let's go get this." You know what I mean? And so that's what my mom was applying. She was keeping it together so that we can keep it together. And
Mom sounds like a really strong woman.
She's a beast. If you look up her on Instagram, dude, she's 71. Dude, she's like does pull-ups, push-ups, run. I mean, people think she's like my sister sometimes. Like she's a beast because she still has that let's go get it. Like her mindset is, I'm not going to rely on anybody to do anything for me. I don't even want to have to rely on medication. I don't want to rely on having to go to the hospital for anything. And she had that mindset ever since my dad died.
See, this is something that in this country, like I speak for myself and probably a lot of other people.
Yeah.
Like we don't get that. Yeah. Just like we don't really understand what it's like to have our land invaded or something like that, right? We're this experiment in the West, beautiful experiment. Yeah. This island, and we take for granted the fact that I can pick up the phone, call 911. Some chick's gonna answer, right?
Yep.
I go to the hospital, I say I need something. Like even people who are uninsured, and that's a huge problem. We got to fix that. But like they'll still give them treatment and stuff. Yeah. You just kind of like. I don't know. More and more recently, I've said this on a lot of podcasts recently, but I keep thinking about like how fragile society is,
man.
And I'm trying to like understand how close we are to like not having that stuff if something went wrong. Yeah. But you get that.
Yeah,
Your mom gets it completely.
And parenting. I think it's so funny you bring that up because I think that the reason why we are where we are. I'm about to be 41 in 2 weeks, right?
You look great.
Trying, brother. It's not easy, man. But I would just like, I think you're still in that same time period where we had to work. We didn't have social media. We had to entertain ourselves. Like we had to, for the most part, I want to say, I know I got disciplined. Like we got disciplined. And sometimes we got yelled at, not just by our parents, but by like the neighbor. Yes. Like, yo, what do you do? Get over here. You go tell your mama on you, right? Yes. That doesn't happen now. And parents, like parents are it's like parents are scared of their kids, man. Dude, I told Brad, I went to Phil's barbecue yesterday. Oh, I didn't tell Brad. I told Jessica. I went to Phil's barbecue yesterday. It was this long line, and Phil's barbecue is like on a square. It takes up this square of a block, and it's in like this kind of strip mall. But it's like the square is in the center of the strip mall, and so there's cars that drive back and forth on each side of of Phil's barbecue. And it's these two kids. The boy couldn't have been no older than 10 years old. The girl couldn't have been no older than like 7 years old. And they're literally running, they're playing tag. hitting each other and running into the street. Like cars are like driving by, stopping, about to hit the kids. And yo, my blood was boiling. I look back at the parents. I was like, I was literally about to yell at the parents because I was like, yo, your kid is gonna die. Because then the kids, and the one girl, she's not even looking when she's like running from her brother. She's just like blindly running into the street. And Caden and Caleb, my two oldest sons, they came up to me because I saw this and they were just like,
they wouldn't be doing that.
I said to her, I said to Caleb, I was hoping, I said, yeah, because you know I whoop your ass. And they laughed. It was like, we know, Dad. And they kept on coming up to me for me to do something, and I wanted to, but at the same time, there's a dad right there. Finally, the dad, see, because everybody's looking at the kids running constantly into the street about to get hit by a car and running back. And finally, the dad walks up, and the dad puts his hands on the kids, and it's like he didn't even know what to say. He just put his hands on his son's shoulder and then walked back. And I was like, that's the problem. Like those two kids, they don't know what discipline is. They don't understand consequences for actions.
Yeah.
They don't understand that, like, yo, there's certain things you're supposed to do, there's certain things you're not supposed to do. When somebody approaches you that's an authority figure, there's a way you're supposed to respond. And we've lost that. And a lot of that comes from the parents.
Guess what, everybody? It is that time of year again. Football season is officially upon us, and you know what that means. It is time to place those bets. As a bettor, you demand perfection, and MyBookie delivers. NFL, college football, and a brand new cash-out system gives you the opportunity to bet and win all season long. First two legs of your parlay hit, with MyBookie you can cash out and place a new bet or let it ride for a chance at a bigger prize. So join the MyBookie family for an entire season filled with daily odds boosts, same-game parlays, and super contests. Oh yeah, there's also a special twist. Down below in the description, there's a link that will take you to download the app. Upon doing so, you can use the promo code Dorey, D-O-R-E-Y, on a deposit of $50 or more to get up to $200 injected instantly right into your account. Once again, click that link below and use the promo code Dorey, D-O-R-E-Y, on your first $50 deposit or more and get cash quick. Thank you so much to MyBookie for supporting our podcast. Please show them some love with a download today.
And yes. and my grandmother, my grandfather, my mom would tell me, like, they loved her, but they were like, yo, you will do things right the first time. You will show up on time. You will be respectful. You will do X, Y, and Z. And if she didn't, then she had to pay the man for it. And so she instilled that in us. And that's why she was and still is the woman she, and we've lost, the parenting has been lost.
Why do you think that's happened?
I think a part of it is social media. That's a small part of it.
Mm-hmm.
I think you have this generation that, at least my generation, that doesn't really want to grow up. I think, we want to stay 20, 16. I think you have a lot of people that are living their lives through their kids or trying to live their lives through their kids instead of being a parent, be a friend. I see it with, I have friends who, they're my age and their kids be bugging out. And I tell them, like, yo, you need to get that in check right now, son. And it's like, they giggle and laugh because it's like they want to be friends. The divorce rate has been around. I don't want to say always, but I would say in the recent, 20, 30 years, has always been around 50%. Right?
That sounds right.
And so you have parents who have to essentially be a friend to maintain a relationship with a kid.
Yeah.
Because it's like, mommy can't be the bad guy because daddy can't be. Mommy and daddy hate each other. Mommy's always looking for something to, pin on daddy. Daddy's always looking for something to pin on mommy. Hey, I know that I can get away with whatever I want. I know that I could do whatever I want. And I got a friend that's like that where, his kid, there's certain things he won't do to his kid. And I'm not talking about like spanking the kid or anything like that. Like taking the iPad away from the kid.
Right. Doesn't want to be the bad guy.
He doesn't want to be the bad guy. So I think that plays a role in it as well. But I think it goes back to my generation doesn't want to grow up.
That's a really, I don't know that I've heard that answer before on that when this topic comes up. That's everything you said there. I agree with it. And I think for anything like this, it's always going to be a litany of reasons, right? It's not just one thing, but one that you're kind of saying in there, I'm just going to expand and put the name on it, is the phone. Because I think, and more specifically, rather than just the phone and the fact that we use it a lot, we don't have presence because of it, right? You talk about standing in line. One of the things I try to do when I'm in lines now is I like to keep my phone in my pocket. I don't want the distraction. I don't. I want to be present as much as I fucking hate lines. I want to be present in this line. I'll watch people, right? Which is something you had to be very good at in your career and everything. And I'm looking at a lot of parents where kids have been raised on this thing, watching all that shit on TikTok all the time. They don't have an appreciation for any respect or values like that because of it. And they don't have an example because if you look in front of them in that same line, their dad's on the fucking phone too.
Exactly. You know?
So it's like and the dad doesn't want to scold them for being on the phone because he's on the phone.
Because he'd be a hypocrite,
Right? So I think a big part of it is, we have this dopamine cycle of cell phones in the country that, it's global now too, let's be honest. But, I see it, I can speak to what I see here. Right? And
that's spot on.
I think that combined with all those factors, that's really good. Parents don't want to grow up and they want to be friends with their kid. You're definitely right about that.
Yeah, just think about it. Think about people 40s, 50s getting plastic surgery and, to try and, I'm not just talking about women, I'm talking about guys, you know what I mean, as well, trying to do certain, trying to stay young, wearing clothes and all of that stuff, you know what I mean? I'm guilty of that. I don't like wearing my hat forward. I've always liked wearing my hat backwards since I was a kid, so I'm guilty of that to a certain extent as well, but, it's just, we all gonna get old, bro. This is sometimes I tell old people that try to be young, I'm like, yo, listen, you had that time. It's over. Be old. Be cool. Like, embrace it. Embrace the wisdom that you've gained from living life.
I think people feel like if they live naturally, they're going to become the get off my lawn guy. That doesn't have to be the case.
It doesn't have to be the case at all. It doesn't have to be the case. But you don't have to go to the other extreme either.
Yes.
By, being immature or, being a grandma going to the club with your granddaughter.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Or being a mom and going to the club with your daughter.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Seen that one a lot.
Yeah.
Grandma less. Mom, I've seen a lot.
You know the deal. And it's just like, come on. And then being the one that's trying to hook up with dude or push your daughter on the dudes or whatever the case may be because,
That's weird.
Yeah. It's like, our generation, that's the issue. And I think it could change. But I think, again, it starts with conversations like this and people looking inwardly and be like, just like with the whole human trafficking thing, the point of these conversations is not for us to just sit here and talk. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. Like, it's for people to be able to listen and reflect. Man, am I the one is that me? Am I trying to be a friend of my kid? Am I like on my cell phone all of the time, like not paying attention to my kid? Am I the one that's like, trying to stay young, do all of these things? And if it is, 100%. You could do something about it.
Yeah, I'd like to think, I sit here while I'm doing it. I think I'm really lucky because I literally have the front row seat. But I'd like to think a lot of people listening have a lot of the thoughts that pop in my head when I have different guests in here that are also popping in theirs because I'm constantly like, first of all, I have all these different people in here, so I'm constantly learning things. But then, people will just be explaining their experience and it'll reveal something in like my weakness. And I feel like I have this growth hack here of like, ooh, wait, I do that wrong. Now I know. Now I can do it. But we should live in a country where like there is kind of like that elder statesman kind of thing with your parents, and it's not buddy and friend. It's like you have a great relationship, but parent-child. I mean, my parents I have a great relationship with my parents. They were not my friend. Like that was a very, like there's no mistaking that. The closest to a friend was my dad calling me buddy, literally, but like it wasn't like that.
It wasn't like that,
No, it was
like, hey,
like,
come on, buddy.
It was like, you're going to go fucking do this. Thank you. He was nicer than that. But you know what I mean? And it's like, have you ever read the book, The Fourth Turning?
No, I haven't.
You got to check that out. It's these sociologists. I'm not going to go. I've done it on other podcasts. I'm not going to spend 10 minutes explaining it. But in essence, the Spark Notes version. These sociologists in the 1990s, sociologists, historians, said, wait a second. Every historian has always made the mistake of thinking that because they're a historian, they can predict the future. And when they do that, they biasly
project,
change what the future patterns are going to be. All we're going to do is we're going to identify the patterns, and we're just going to go like this, and we're not going to predict shit.
Exactly.
We're just going to say, so that's probably what's going to happen. I don't know how.
Yeah.
And that's what they did. And they essentially figured out that everything happens in these 21 to 22 year cycles of generations. Four generations, 4 cycles, over and over and over again.
Yeah.
Just to put a little cap on it for you, Revolutionary War, 75 to 83 in the 1700s. 80 to 85 years later, Civil War, 61 to 65. 80 to 85 years later, World War II, 41 to 45 here. 80 to 85 years later, COVID era, right? So shit kind of happens in weird cycles. And one of the things that always occurs is in the different age brackets, like 0 to 21, 21 to 42, 42 to 63, 63 and older, there's always the same generation on top of the same other type of generation because it repeats in force. So we are currently in a cycle where the generation who's like in charge, the 42 to 63ers, are generally, they're called the nomads. And they're the people whose parents, like, that generation kind of like wasn't as active with them or whatever. So now as parents, they're trying to make it up with their kids and they don't know how to do that right. So in this case, they're trying to be like friends with them and shit.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And I look at it and I hear you give a really well thought out answer like that. And I'm like, kind of lines up.
Yeah, man.
You know?
Yeah, that's the problem, bro. And well, that's one of the problems, but I tell you what, I tell my kids just like you said. I say to my kids the same thing. I ain't supposed to be your friend.
Yeah,
I'm supposed to be your father. And I say that my Jessica, my wife, your mom is not supposed to be your friend. She's supposed to be your mom. So do X, Y, and Z. And because that's the way I was raised, and that's how you raise good people who will then raise good people who will then raise good people. You know, I had somebody ask me the question the other day. He's like, what does winning mean to you? And I said, winning to me means my kids have grown up to be assets to society. They grow up to be respectable, law-abiding citizens, giving, not self-serving, genuine people. That's what winning means to me. And I will not have won until that happens. And I will have failed if my kids 20, 30, 40, become 23, 40, 30, whatever the case may be, and they're dirtbags, or they're in prison, or they're like, they're unaccountable, or they're self-serving, or they're beating their wives, or, my daughter's sleeping around doing all of these crazy things. I will have failed. Like, life for me is all about them. Because at the end of the day, when I'm gone, hopefully, more than likely, they'll still be here. And then when they're gone, then their legacy will still be here. And that's what it's all about. And that's why, I tell them, I say, this is why daddy does what he does. This is why daddy makes you make your bed. This is why mommy has a chore list for you. This is why when you do something that you're not supposed to do, you have to get disciplined. We don't enjoy disciplining you, but we're trying to raise you up. Our job, our priority is to raise you up to be, law-abiding, good, serving people.
Yeah.
And we will have failed if not. And I think that's another thing. I think going back to the whole, people don't want to grow up. What's an aspect of not growing up? Remaining selfish. I can tell you, like, when I was 15, when I was freaking a kid, it's all about me.
Yeah.
I want my candy. Same with my kids, right? Like, kids, it's all about them, right?
Yeah.
When you get into the teens, it's all about me. It's all about getting girls. It's all about getting money. It's all about me. Getting the 20s, it's all about me, right? And to a certain extent, that can be helpful because that can help project you to where you need to be. But at some point, right, life is not about you anymore. Life has to be about your legacy. Life has to be about the people to your right and to your left. And I got that in the SEAL teams, man. I tell people, all the people ask me, were you ever scared as a SEAL? I said, my only fear is good, right? One, but my only fears as a SEAL was doing something or not doing something that would lead to the death or serious injury of the man to my right or the man to my left.
Highest stakes ever.
I didn't care about death.
Yeah.
I could die. I gave up my fear of death the moment I raised my hand to join the military during an act of war, during a time of war. I gave up my fear of death even more so when I decided to go to SEAL training with dudes dying in SEAL training. A guy died in my class right in front of me. You know, I gave my fear of death way before I even went on my first op. So at this point, it's not me dying. It's about the people around me. And I would say for me, it wasn't until I turned 26 that I was like, you know what? Life is not about me anymore. Life is about the people around me. And
don't they say the brain, I might be way off on this, but like the
fully
brain
develops
develops at like 25, 26?
Yeah,
it's like in that
is it
area?
25? I thought it was 28. But it
Could
might
be, but
might
it's
be,
in that
yeah,
neighborhood though. That's interesting. Continue.
So you know, so many people, their brains may not have developed. You know what I mean? Or, you know, they just can't stop being selfish. Life is still about them. And so when life is still about you, you can't properly parent. You're not going to be a visionary. Like my dad, you have Nigerians, you have people in Nigeria, when they want to become rich, their aspirations are politics. Like, I'll take myself as an example. And growing up in the Bronx, when we want to be rich, rise up, what do we look at? For the most part, myself and a lot of guys and girls I grew up, rapping, sports, or hustling. Right? In Nigeria, it's different. It's all about, from the time kids are small, go into politics. Their parents groom them to go into politics, because you can go into politics poor and come out a billionaire. Not a millionaire, a billionaire. Because Nigeria is very corrupt.
Yeah.
Because you get a lot of Nigerian senators and governors, you know, who they're taking, you know, there was a story out of Nigeria a few years ago when the Nigerian military were trying to fight Boko Haram in the northern part of Nigeria. And I can't remember the name of the state, but the troops had barely had ammunition, guns were all jacked up, didn't have vehicles, didn't have nothing. Why? Because the governor of that state received, and I'm just throwing out a random number, I can't remember the exact number, received like $100 million from the federal government. Hey, go fight Boko Haram. By the time that money got to the troops, it was like $5 million left.
Yeah.
Right. And so that even there's a story about in Nigeria of the oil ministry, the minister of oil, this woman who she was cutting side deals with other countries, and ships would just disappear with barrels of oil. But she would when she got out of a government, she was a billionaire, billions of dollars, right? And then she went to London when when the Nigerian government was like, you need to come back here. We found out that you stole billions of dollars in oil. She was like, I need to stay in London because I have cancer. So she stayed in London, right? And so a lot of people in Nigeria, they groom their kids to try and get into politics, because if they can get into politics, then they could become rich. That's their way out. That senator, I don't know if we had the story up there, but the senator of who with the organ harvesting, where he in the UK, him and his wife tried to get their.
Oh, the one we looked at earlier.
This dude here earlier. That dude.
I'm not going to try to say that. Sorry.
He millionaire.
Yeah.
He was a senator. He's a senator. He was a senator in Nigeria. Came out of politics, a millionaire, moved to the UK. And that's what a lot of Nigerian politicians do. After they've served their time and they've made their millions or billions, they go to the UK or they come to the US.
It's sad that you say parents then aspire for their kids to do that, though, because they know inherently what that means if they're aspiring for them to do that. It's not, they're not doing it in honorable ways.
No. And so I say that to say there's a line. There's I'm going into this field of politics for me, because it's about me, versus my dad's story. I'm trying to build this island for them, for my people, so that we can have a place to go do business.
And they killed him for it.
That's the same thing we've seen with parenting.
Yes.
It's I want to stay young. I want to have a good time through my kids. I want to hang out with my kids' friends and all of this other stuff. And it's like, no, dude, it's time for you to pour into your kids, pour into your legacy. Because not the cycle's going to continue, and then they're going to be just like you. And then that's going to create another generation of jacked up kids, which is going to create. So it's a crazy cycle, man.
Well, the other thing that you have now that's great, that through no fault of your own, and certainly no fault of your mom's own, you didn't have growing up, is you and your wife are both there to be parents to your kid. Your dad was taken from you, murdered when you were 5.
Yeah.
And your mom had to be a single mother. So, you know, you mentioned you guys lost everything when that happened because it was taken from him.
Yeah.
Did you come to the United States like right away?
Yeah, it was quick. One minute we're in Nigeria, my mom's like, we're out.
And you went to the Bronx with no money.
Bronx. Nothing. As a matter of fact, my mom got to the U.S. She called up an uncle of ours on her side, her cousin, said, hey, I have no money. Husband just died. Don't have a nickel to my name. Can you loan me some money so that way I could get some food, just something to tie me over until I get a job. He's like, let me call you back in 5 minutes. 5 minutes later, phone rings. Other than the phone was my mom's cousin's wife. She said to my mom, how dare you call up my husband and ask him for money? Who the hell do you think you are? Don't you ever do that again. And then she hung up the phone on my mom. So here my mom had been kicked in losing her husband, and now she's been kicked again by another family member. And that was, I have to say, the point in her life where she was like, a switch went off in her head, where she was just like, I ain't got nothing. I got to make this happen. Mm-hmm. We had nothing. I tell that story just to emphasize the point of we literally had nothing.
Where'd you move in the Bronx?
West Bronx, Fordham and Sedgwick. Mm. And like I mentioned earlier, my mom did a good job of masking the reality of what had happened. She kept our apartment well kept. She had some of my dad's art peppered around the apartment. She would emphasize to us, keep your room clean, keep the kitchen clean, all of that stuff. And she did a good job at hiding a lot of things from us.
What kind of jobs did she work?
She started out as a teacher at the South Bronx, teaching elementary school. She would take jobs at museums and art galleries and even playhouses in order to expose us to the arts for free and give us like a secondary education. Wow. And then she started a creative writing business called First Impressions Writing Service. I'll never forget, because that was her thing that she always would tell my brother and I. It's always about your first impression. So she started a writing service. So she would write term papers for people. She would write resumes for people. And this is when computers started coming out. People didn't really know how to use Microsoft and type and all of that. And she started out with a typewriter, and then she migrated to, typing on computers. She would do all of that stuff for people as a side hustle, resumes, term papers, cover letters, all of that stuff. And she hustled, man. She would wake up before my brother and I. We lived in a 17-story building. She would run the steps a few times.
Running the steps in the bed
for a workout, because she couldn't afford a gym. So she would run up and down, up and down, up and down, come back, shower, get me and my brother up, get us fed, take us to school, go to her job as a teacher, come back, pick us up. Well, yeah, come back, pick us up, get us home. Well, no, my grandmother would pick us up. So we'd be home by the time she came back. She'd get us fed, work another job, and then, put us down to bed and all that stuff. And then she'd work another job. And then she'd go to sleep, wake up early again, do it again. And so for her, because she was like, I need to make it. I remember asking her one day, I said, Mom, why didn't you ever get married? You never got married. I'm a beautiful woman. I was like, why? She's like, I never wanted to bring any confusion into the house. She said, because I knew that if you guys would be successful, I don't want to bring anything in the house that would hurt your chances of being successful or would drive you down the wrong path. Because she said, if you could be successful, then I will have made it. Everything will be all right. And so that's why I didn't want to bring anybody else into this house, or I didn't want to get in a relationship, because her priority was us. And that's why she worked so hard. That's why she did all of the things that she did. And fast forward, it wasn't until I was about 8 years old that I began to really realize the situation we were in, because I would go to the rent office with my mom, and now I understood what she was doing. She was,
even at 8, still young.
8. Yeah, she was 8, but I was realizing, okay, she's asking for extra time to pay the rent.
Yeah.
When I was younger, I didn't really understand the conversation she was having with the guy at the rent office or the woman at the rent office. So I began to do stuff like that. Then my mom would get my brother and I borrow Ivory soap and say, hey, I can't afford to go down and do laundry. I don't have coins, money to do it. Wash it. Here's Ivory soap. Wash your underwears and socks in the sink. Dry them out. Hang them up over the shower pole. There were times she didn't have enough food to feed herself. She had just enough food to feed my brother and I. She would put the food on the table. We would look at her, Mom, why don't you eat? And don't worry about me. I'm okay. And she would just watch us eat. And I remember one time my mom made something with onions as a kid. I hated onions. I hated onions with a passion. And I remember it was like she had diced the onions, so they were like these cubes, and they was like a little slippery. And I remember spitting them out of my mouth around the chicken sauce, whatever that she made. And she slapped me in the back of my head, and I didn't understand why she was so angry, but now I do now, because it was like, she's not eating, you know what I mean? And so I began to recognize some of those things, and then going out into the streets of the Bronx, you know what I mean? And going to the basketball court, and going into the local bodegas and seeing the mafia guys, you know, this is in the early 90s, the mafia guys and with the big collars, and going in and getting taxes from the Dominican store owners. And there was a guy in my building who we knew was his name was Jimmy. He had a spot called Jimmy's Cafe, and we knew that he was connected with the mob, and the mob was doing stuff at Jimmy's Cafe, and that dude disappeared, never found his body. To this day, they don't know what happened to him, but the police and everybody knows that he was tied in with the mafia. And so I began to see all of these things, and I got beat up really bad when I was 8 years old by a guy who just got released from prison. He was like
at
30.
8?
Yep, at 8. I was 35. He was 35, just got released from prison, a 19-year-old, and a kid who was my age. I was playing basketball in a basketball court, DeVoe Park, which is a crazy dangerous park. And I started talking junk to this kid. We playing basketball, you know what I mean? And he's talking junk to me when he's winning, so I'm talking junk back to him when I'm winning. And it got to a point where he didn't like it, and he told me to shut up. I said no. I said, what are you going to do? And he said, I'm going to go get my brother. And I said, go get him. And he comes back, and 5 minutes later, I look across the street from the park, and there's 3 people coming across the street.
And a 19-year-old beat the shit out of you.
19-year-old, 35-year-old, and an 8-year-old. And slammed me on the
35-year-old too.
Yep. Slammed me on the concrete, punched me in the face, held me down so the kid could spit on me. Yeah, man. And so it was all of those things that allowed me to realize I'm not in Kansas anymore. And then the crackheads in the park.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, mom was like, oh, they're just sick. But like my grandmother, I had an uncle who was a crack addict, you know what I mean? And she's like, oh, he's just sick. But now I'm beginning to see, oh, he wasn't sick, or these dudes in the park ain't sick, they're crackheads. You know what I'm saying?
You're getting a feel for this at a really young age.
Yeah,
I mean,
man.
8 years old to,
Yeah, 8.
I don't even remember when I was 8 years old. You know what I mean? Like you could pick up on these things. That's pretty impressive.
Yeah.
But it's also, I can't imagine having my head filled with all that information, these realities of, let's call it what it is, the cold world. Yeah. In that way.
8, 9, I remember walking to school. I'll never forget, I was about 11 years old, so I think I was getting ready to go into middle school, and coming back, actually walking from school and seeing these dudes jumping and beating up a kid, man. A kid that was 12 years old, teenagers beating him up, saying you wanting to get involved, but like just feeling helpless, because it's like, I'm a kid. What am I going to do? You know what I mean? There was a girl in my brother's class named Dina. Her story, I mean, if you just Google Dina, the Bronx murder, whatever, she was one of my brother's friends. Dina, I can't remember her last name. Bronx, I think Sedgwick Avenue murder. Like
Sedgwick Avenue murder?
Yeah, just put Dina, it's Deena.
Deena, not D-I.
Deena, Bronx murders. Sedgwick.
Bronx girl fatally shot in apartment laundry room.
95.
Yeah, there it is.
You know what I'm saying? That was my brother's friend. You know what I mean? And the crazy thing, she was a sweet girl. Sweet girl, you know what I mean? She was 13 in my brother's class. My brother goes to class one day. She's not there. Everybody's crying. Well, she got murdered. Dude wanted to have sex with her. Oh. She wanted to have sex with him.
13?
He shot her in the face. Grown man, shot her in the face. Killed her. And so, and as a matter of fact, I remember walking my cousin home from school. He was hanging out in our park, because that's right across the street from where I grew up. I grew up on Fordham and Sedgwick. And so I was walking my cousin home and with my other older cousin and my brother one night. And right in front of that building was a shootout. And it was like a drive-by shootout, blah, blah, blah. So we're running back, to my mom's house in the middle of, bullets flying. So that was my environment. And, unfortunately, I became a product of that environment because that was all I saw. People say, why why aren't there more SEALs and more doctors and all of these coming out of the Bronx? It's like, because we're not exposed to that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I wasn't exposed to that.
How early did this happen when you started running with some of the bad crowd?
I was never a run with the bad crowd kind of guy. I was more of a let's get money type of guy. For me, it was all about, I'm gonna get this money. So I did little things, like I would steal from my mom. Then that progressed to the little money she had. I would go to stores, local bodegas, and steal chips.
You'd steal from your mom?
Yeah, man. As a matter of fact, I tell the story in my book, but I stole the engagement ring that my mom gave my dad. She cherished that thing.
What made you do that? Because it seemed like you had such love for your mom and respect for her.
I was duplicit. I did love my mom, but I loved money. I didn't have, and I think what it all comes back to is the lack of affirmation from a father. I tell people all the time that I believe that every boy needs a father to affirm him and to teach him how to be a man. And every girl needs a father to affirm her and to teach her how to be loved by men. And when a child doesn't have that, a child will just unconsciously seek out that affirmation. That affirmation is as powerful as love. It's as powerful. So that affirmation I was seeking was as powerful as the love that my mom was giving me. But my mom couldn't be a father. She couldn't be the one that says, hey, good job, son. I'm here for you, son. I got that from my mom, but a boy needs to hear that from his father. And because I didn't have a father to do that, I sought that in things that would acquire that for me.
In money.
And because what happens when you get the money? It was the locks back in the day: money, power, respect. Yeah. Right? What happens when you get the money? Then you get the power. You get the power, then people will respect you. And what does that mean? People will affirm you. Oh, you the man. Oh, look, you got the new sneakers. Oh, you got shorty. Oh, you got this, that. You know what I mean? And again, that's the culture though that we're raised in the 90s. Even now, you see a lot of inner cities. You know, Chicago, you know what I mean? Bronx, Brooklyn, South Side of Chicago. It's like the culture is like, do X, Y, and Z. This is what a man is. You know what I mean? Punch them in the face if they disrespect you.
Yeah.
You know, you see these senseless murders, people just getting shot and killed for over nothing. Like, oh, because you said something, or you put out a rap song, disrespect, I'm going to come find you and murder you, and then now I'm going to go to prison for the rest of my life.
It all, yeah. I mean, it's you can't know it unless you lived it, first of all.
Yeah.
I mean, guys like me can hear about it and whatever from you, but there is something, there's a common thread when I talk with guys who are from the hard environment, like you were. It all comes back to like when I had Wally Green in here, he was talking about it. Like it's pride and respect, and the way that is shown is just in many cases bastardized in environments where there's poverty.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. But again, that pride and respect, the substratum of it that everybody is seeking is that affirmation. Because at the end of the day, when you look at the single parent rate in the inner cities, you know, it's like what, 70, 80% in some places? No fathers in the home?
Yep.
And in those same places where no fathers are in the home, 70, 80%, what's the crime rate?
High.
What's the teenage pregnancy rate?
High.
What's the high school dropout rate?
High.
There you go.
Yeah.
Absence of a father. And so that's why I did the things that I did. Yeah, my mom loved me, but I wanted something that I couldn't get from a father.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, man, that progressed to selling drugs. And
how young did you sell drugs?
I started selling drugs when I was like maybe 14, 15, 16. And then that progressed to running high-level scams, man, where I was out there just hustling cell phones. You know, cell phones became nobody really used cell phones back in the day. Only like the rich, you know, Wall Street brokers had the big brick phones, but then the Nokia phone came out, and then you started getting Motorola StarTech phones started coming out. And so I was able to get a gig at a cell phone company. I won't mention the company's name. and I got a job there because a guy put me on as to how to hustle phones. Essentially, you know, activate 3 lines of credit, 3 cell phone lines on one person's credit. Get their data.
Activate 3 on one.
Yeah. So back in the day, when cell phones started popping up, I don't know if you remember, they had the $29.99 plans. $29.99.
No, I don't remember that.
Oh yeah, I keep forgetting you 30.
Yeah,
I'm thinking
I'm young.
All right, so back around 2000, 2001, cell phones started to become a thing, and the plan started out $29.99 a month for $30. Okay, if you 20, and you would get 29. for 30 minutes. Excuse me, I said $30. $29.99 a month for 30 minutes. Where the cell phone companies would make their money was on the overage charges, because who's going to just talk for 30 minutes on a cell phone when cell phone is becoming like the primary means of communication, right? And so these companies weren't selling the phones per se; they were selling the plans, right? And so pretty much all cell phone companies at the time, and so the way we would get clients is we pitch them a phone, say, all right, if you buy this phone, got to run your credit. You got good credit, you can get this phone. If you got even better credit, then you get 3 phones. All you got to do is pay $30 a month. Now, with some phones, like with the more high-end phones, like when you start getting to the Motorola Tic Tac phone that looked like a little Tic Tac. Oh, yeah, I keep forgetting you.
No idea.
Then you get the Motorola two-way time pages. Remember the time port, silver and gray? Nope. Sorry, silver and black? Okay, yeah, that was...
Sorry.
All right, anyway. So, long story short, I would get people's date of birth, social, name, and then I would activate a phone. More cases, 3 phones on that one person's line of credit. I would then go sell those 3 phones to drug dealers for $300 to $500, sometimes $800, depending on the style of the phone. The drug dealers like the phones because they would stay on for 90 days. First 30 days, you wouldn't get a bill. At the 30-day mark, after you pass the 30-day mark, then a bill would come in.
Oh.
At the 30-day mark, the bill will come in. You had until the 60-day mark to pay the bill. If it wasn't paid by the 90-day mark, the phone will cut off. And so drug dealers like the phones because...
They're burner phones.
They stay on for 90 days, cut off, come back to me, get a new phone, and guess what? It's unlimited plan. I was doing unlimited cell phone minutes before there wasn't even unlimited plans, right?
Yeah.
And so I was making a lot of money doing that. That was my cell phone hustle. And... that's when I got into the music business. I was essentially laundering the money through a record company I started called Eighth Wonder Entertainment.
How old are you when you started that?
I'm 18, 19.
Okay.
You know, I'm 17, 18, 19.
Were you an aspiring rapper at the time? Or?
I wanted to be like P. Diddy and Dame Dash. So Brad knows because I got this compilation album I keep the compilation album that we were able to make on my office desk as a reminder where I came from. And it's a picture of me and the artist that we had signed to the record company. And so I was just trying to be P. Diddy. I wasn't the rapper. I wanted to be the guy that, you know, behind the business side of things. And so I wanted to do what Dame Dash and Jay-Z did, where they used the drug game to help get them set up in the music game, and then they left the drug game, and it worked out for them. So that was my exit plan. And so, you know, that's where I was spending the money. I was spending the money recording at studios. And
were you going to school during all this?
Yeah,
or
I was still in school.
Were you cutting school?
No, I was going to school because that was my way to keep my mom off my back.
So she thought everything was
chameleon.
All good.
That's how I was becoming chameleon. Because, you know, if I'm in school and my mom's not getting truancy letters and I'm doing fairly good and I'm graduating to the next grade, then she's off my back. You know, she thinks I got a job at a sneaker store, wherever. I had a whole sneaker hustle as well. That was another thing. I was working at a sneaker store called Athlete's Foot, and you know, long story short, I remember
Athlete's Foot.
Yeah, man. Long story short, one day a guy came in and he was in a rush. And he said, "Hey, I need a pair of sneakers right now. I got to get to a meeting." And I ran in. He looked at the wall, picked out sneakers. I ran and got them, and he just threw me cash and said, "Don't worry about it. Just charge me, overcharge me, whatever the case may be. I don't need to change." And he runs out, and that's when I got the idea. Oh, I could do this. And I took his sneakers and I put them in the box, and I put that box in the defect section. Because we had in our warehouse, we had a defect section, and like every 4 or 6 months, like somebody would come from the main warehouse and they wouldn't even look in the boxes. They would just come, grab the boxes of defected shoes and take them. And so I was selling. I wasn't doing that for every person. I was smart about it, but kids in my high school would be like, "Yo, I want the new Jordans. I want the new pennies. I want the new whatever." I'd be like, "I got you. Give me if the sneaker costs $120, be like, give me 100 racks, or give me $90. They give me the cash, come back next day, boom, here's your sneakers.
Oh my God.
So I was doing the drugs, I was doing the sneakers, then I was doing the cell phones.
True businessman.
True businessman.
All the way around. I mean? Was your mom talking about college during this whole time though? Because you're doing pretty well in school. Like, what was?
I wasn't doing well. I was doing good enough to graduate to the next grade.
Got it.
I wasn't doing like my brother. So my brother was different. My brother graduated high school in 3 years. He got his master. He graduated college in 3. He got a full ride academic scholarship to Syracuse University. He studied engineering there, and then he got his master's in computer science engineering in 1 year.
Wow.
So he was the brains. You know what I mean? I was the one that wanted to be in the streets, and so I did good enough to get to the next grade. And that was enough to kind of keep my mom off my back. And then I graduated high school. And once I graduated high school, I didn't want to go to college. I did not want to go to college. I wanted to be a music mogul. That's what I wanted. Seriously, that's what I wanted. Like to me, going to college was like beneath me. That was like below me. That's like, again, I'm a kid. I'm a street kid. You know what I mean? Yeah, but not just an entrepreneur. I'm a street kid. I want the Benz. I want the jewelry.
Yes.
You don't get that going to college. You get that being in the streets. You get the girls by hustling and doing music. That's what I wanted, because I was trying to get that affirmation I didn't get from my father.
At what point, like, how old were you when you started to realize what really happened to your father?
As far as like the whole, the whole setup and all of that stuff, that wasn't until I was in the military. That wasn't until.
So at no point, hold on a second.
Yeah.
So you were 5, just for people. We talked about that a half hour ago or so, or whatever. But you were 5 when you find out. You go back to playing with your toys because you don't even know the difference.
Oh, you mean what happened as far as my dad's death?
No.
Yeah.
I'm saying, like, at what age do you start to realize, oh, Dad's gone? It wasn't just a business trip. Like, he really is dead.
Yeah.
He's not coming. I wonder what happened there. And then when did you figure? It sounds like you're saying you didn't figure it out until the military.
Well, as far as like when I finally realized he was dead, like I'd probably say like 6 months, but I still didn't really understand death. It was like one of those weird gradual transitions, right?
Yes.
Like, he's gone and I'm still young, and then finally, like, I realized he's gone and it doesn't really hit me. It wasn't until I was about 8 that it hurt.
Yeah.
That it affected me. Now, as far as like what happened with all the corruption and stuff around his situation, I didn't feel. My mom would tell me things here and there as a kid.
I mean, she knew, obviously.
Oh, she knew. Yeah, because I would ask my mom. I was like, "Are we gonna ever get the island? Are we gonna ever get our dad's money?" And she would always say, "In Nigeria, don't hold your breath."
Yeah.
She's like, "Don't hold your breath at all." You know what I mean? But it wasn't until later, in talking to my brother, my half brother, because my dad was married years before he married my mom, and I got a half brother who was a lawyer in the UK, and then he went back down to Nigeria after my dad's death to try to fight them. As a matter of fact, he's been on the case for almost 40 years. Yeah, as a matter, they offered about 4 or 5 years ago. The government offered him $8 million
to settle.
To settle. My brother said no because again, it was my dad spent £8 million. He spent £8 million in the 70s, just for inflation, plus interest, plus the money that my dad spent to dredge the foreshore to create the island, plus the contracts he signed, plus the construction that he already, money that he had put up. So,
but is your half brother worried about his safety? Like, he's going after the government here, and maybe in a public way, if he's going after him legally for this long.
Well, he goes back and forth between the UK and Nigeria.
Yeah, that wouldn't make me feel better.
But I know, but it's his legacy. He's trying to get it back.
That's awesome. I'm not.
But at the same time, I think that so in '87 when he started, they didn't pay much attention to him because he's like, here's this guy who was my half brother who was born in Nigeria. Like when he was like 6, he was sent to boarding school in London, and he was educated in London, and then now he's coming back. He's a Yankee. He's not a threat to them. He's not a threat to the night. They're like, oh, here's this boy. He's a UK boy. You know what I mean? And it's like, pay him no mind, right? So I think there's still some of that where to them it's like, you are not really a threat to us. Go play with your toys, right? As a matter of fact, I don't know if you remember that there was a whole there was an end SARS movement and in Nigeria. If you Google end SARS, SARS, Nigeria. Just Google end END SARS and then Nigeria, something like that.
Yeah, here we go. End SARS.
SARS now, right?
Okay.
So that was like, there were riots. It was crazy. Like this was, what year was that? 2020, okay? 2020.
Yeah, October 2020. 2020 was an interesting year for cops around the world.
Yeah. It got crazy out there, right?
Cops and governments.
And so the courthouse in Lagos, where my dad's case has been for like the last 30, 40 years, rioters, say this in quotes, air quotes, they go into the courthouse, they find the files of my dad's case, and they burn just those files. We're talking 30 years of documentation.
Plants.
And then the courthouse says, well, rioters came in and burnt down our courthouse.
Convenient.
And then you go in and check, and it's like they only burnt the case files for my dad's case. Right?
That is sketchy.
So that's why with my brother, it's like, you know, I think the sense is they're not going to do anything to him because they don't see him as a threat. I think they see me more as a threat than they see my brother as a threat. If anything, especially with that social media post and how some stories starting to come out, and especially my background and, you know, and
continue to get more and more attention to in your post-SEAL career.
Yep, and then my book came out, and now it's about to be a movie, so more people are gonna know the story. You know, every day I'm getting Nigerians that are like, I got your back. This corruption has been out of control. It needs to stop. What do you need? Got your back. So I think as my story gets out there more and more and more, you know, I'm more of a threat to them than my brother is.
Is there, because again, like you don't find this out till years and years later. So in a way, I don't know, I can't relate to that. I never had something happen to me like that, thank God. But, you know, when you're molded by it right when it happens with something like that rage lives inside of you your whole life. But in a lot of ways, you didn't have that for 15 years or whatever. So is there, I don't want to ask this question the wrong way, but is there a little bit of like I don't want to say displacement from it, but like you can't try to relive it like it just happened yesterday, and it's like, oh my God, I can't believe this. This is really fucked up. Like if I can change it and expose it, I will. But it's not like this fresh, like just seeing red all the time.
No,
do you understand what I'm asking?
Yeah, no, you know what? I totally understand. I think it's the opposite. I'm grateful for it, man. Like, bro, I'm so grateful for the past that I had and how things transpired. Because I would not be where I am today without that story.
Yeah.
At all. Like, you know, what they meant to harm me was turned around for good. Because yes, it was hard. Yes, it sucked. Yes, we lost. Dude, if I win that case, I'll be a billionaire tomorrow. So yes, I lost billions of dollars. You know what I mean? Or what could have been billions of dollars. But I want to be who I am. I want to have had the path. I want to have had the hard upbringing in the Bronx. And I want to have, you know, had to be snuck into the Navy to freaking and become, I want to have made it through SEAL. I'm in SEAL training, bro, and it's like a kick in the nuts.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm just like, yo, I'm good. You know what I'm saying? Like the cold was horrible. The cold was the hardest part of it. And you know, and the ocean swims was the worst part of it for me. But at the end of the day, I'm like, I could take the beatings, I could take the torment, I could take the name calling, I could take the mental games, because my mind had already been strengthened through my upbringing, through the adverse effect. When I was a kid, I remember the older kids would they would get chalk and draw. All my friends remember this. I'm sure they laughing when they hear this part. They would draw a boxing ring with chalk. And they would pick who was going to fight in a boxing ring. And you had to. But it was slap boxing fights. And we would be slap boxing fights. And we'd just be fighting each other. And like that toughens you up. I'm not saying that's
no, I understand
kids
exactly
need to be raised, but it's like when you have that type of environment, you playing two-hand touch football on concrete, you getting pushed down to the concrete and bleeding, and then you get back up, and it's just normal for you to keep going.
You learn.
You know what I mean? It's just like that hardens you. You know what I'm saying? So by the time I got to this program called SEAL Training, I went through Hell Week. I made it through Hell Week 2 times.
How did you even get there? How did you end up? We skipped that part. How did you end up at the military?
So I ended up selling a drug dealer, like 20 phones. It's a lot more to the story. It's all in my book, man.
It's a good start right there.
Yeah, it's a lot. I sold him 20 phones. They cut off in 2 weeks. And initially I didn't want to sell him the 20 phones because I wanted to, because he came to me, he wanted to do phones in bulk. And I said no, and he kind of, manipulated me or talked me into it. And so I sold him a bulk, all good. Sold him another bulk, all good. Sold him another bulk, all those phones cut off in like 2 weeks.
He ain't happy now.
He ain't happy because what I found out he was doing, instead of dispersing them to his crew, he was flipping the phones. Because he's, being a drug dealer in the Bronx, in New York City, it's one on every corner. It's hot. It's a lot of risk. It's less risky to, hustle. Nobody really understands how the laws and the systems around cell phones. And so how can you get prosecuted? And this seems like a safe bet where you can make a lot of money. It's less risky. Same thing with human trafficking, especially organ harvesting. Traffickers are beginning to realize that it's a lot less risky to do organ harvesting than it is to traffic, because there's more of a paper trail with trafficking, because you're sending a victim out and somebody could come wrap them up at any time, and then you get exposed. Organ harvesting, you harvest somebody's body, your organs, burn them up, nobody knows anything. You pull somebody from one part of the globe, like I did in the short film, put them in another part of the globe, nobody in that other part of the globe knows where they are, nobody in the globe part of the globe they were is going to expect that they're going to be in Venezuela. Same reason why those traffickers took that girl from Texas and moved her to Oklahoma. Yes. You know what I mean? So, sorry, I know I went down a tangent.
No, unfortunately, it makes sense.
Yeah. But I say all that to say, he was trying to move differently. I sold him these phones. They cut off early. He came. Not only was my life threatened, my mom's life was indirectly threatened, because it was like he was
right. He's pissed.
He's pissed.
Yeah,
we're talking a lot of money. Gave him his money back that night. Good chunk of the money back that night. Gave him the rest back the next day. And then that was my wake-up call. That was my...
How old are you?
I'm 19. This is December 2001.
So high school's over.
High school's over.
You're still doing entrepreneurial street scams.
Yep.
And you have a wake-up call.
Yep.
How does that wake-up call translate into, I'm going to go join the Marines?
So for 6 months... Well, for the first 2 months, I went hard to try and get a label deal. I had a meeting at Def Jam with Kevin Lyles. Sat in his office, played him the CD. He stopped halfway through, was like, "You want to hear something better?" I was like, as soon as he said that, my head dropped, because I'm like, dang, that means I ain't getting a deal. And then he put in a CD.
Kanye.
Joe Buttons.
Oh, shit.
He's like, "I got this new dude, just signed him. He hasn't come out yet. Here's his first song. This is what you need to be like." He plays a song, and then at the end, he's like, "This is the type of music I want." And then that kind of ended my career. Joe Buttons ended my music career. And then, one day in June of 2002, long story short, I feel something tell me you need to get out of here, and the way out is the military. And years earlier, when I was 15, I saw a movie called Bad Boys. That was that
great movie,
fantastic movie, classic. Movie. That was the first time I saw two black men who, looked like me, and they were heroes, and that planted a seed in my mind that essentially said you could be something other than a drug dealer, rapper, or athlete. You could still maintain who you are, but be a hero. You don't have to do the things you do. It planted the small inception in my mind. And then about 2 years later, another movie came out called The Rock.
Oh, yeah.
And that was the first time I saw or heard of Navy SEALs. And that's when I was like, yo, if I ever turn my life around, I'm not saying I will, but if I ever turn my life around, I would do that. And so, fast forward to June of 2002, when I felt something say, you need to get out of it, you need to join the military. That's when I said, screw it. Let me see, I ain't got nothing else to go on for me. My brother's in college at this point. I'm 19, about to turn 20, living in my mom's apartment. My life had not amounted to anything. Why not? So I ran down the street I grew up on, went into the Marine recruiter's office first, sat there for like 15 minutes. Nobody showed up. There was coffee on the desk, but nobody showed up. Left, went a couple doors down to the Navy recruiter's office, a beautiful Navy recruiter in there by the name of Tiana Nadine Reyes. And in my mind, I'm thinking, not only am I getting the Navy, but I'm about to make her my girlfriend. But she saw through all my stupidness, because she was from the Bronx. She served joined from the Bronx, served in the fleet, then came back to kind of give back to people in the Bronx, and had me do a practice ASVAB test. Passed that score high enough to get in the Navy, but didn't score high enough to be a SEAL. And then she ran my background, found I had 2 warrants out for my arrest. I had a warrant here in New Jersey, where we at, and I had a warrant in New York. And when she said that,
for the phone stuff, or
that's what I was about to. So I got up as soon as she said that. I ran because that's what I thought it was for. I was like, oh my God, because there were people before I left. Because I left. Not only did I leave, stop doing what I was doing after that had happened with the drug dealer, I also left the company because I was scared that because the phones cut off early, I thought that I was going to get prosecuted because there were people getting caught and prosecuted for federal crime. And so that's what I thought it was for. And she stopped me at the door right before I got there. And she said, what are you doing? I said, I'm getting out of here. She said, you got a suit? I said, no. She said, you got nice shirt, some nice pants? I was like, sure, I'm sure I could find something. She said, come back tomorrow. I said, for what? She said, come back tomorrow. Just come back. Stop being stupid and listen to me. And, you know, growing up in the streets of the Bronx, I tell people this all the time. You got to learn how to read people, especially when you're doing the kind of stuff I was doing. It means the difference between life and death. And this would all serve me well when I got into human intelligence in the teens, because I could tell when a source was lying to me, or whether a source wanted to give me some information but they were holding back, or whether a source was a double agent just trying. But I was able to read that because I grew up around these type of characters my whole life, where I had to read people, and I didn't know what she was going to do. But from what I read, from her reaction, had been with her for an hour or so, I knew that it would be good. So I came back the next day. She was in her dress uniform. She drove me down here to Jersey.
Don't worry about the warrants.
She drove me down to Jersey, put me in front of the judge, advocating on my behalf. She was like, listen, this kid's made mistakes, but he still has potential. Can't join the military, with a criminal record or warrants. 9/11 just happened, by the way, Judge.
I was leaving that out here because you're in New York.
I'm in New York. I saw the Twin Towers come down.
No shit.
I saw the Twin Towers come down. I went and my mom woke me up, and she was, when it all happened, when the first plane hit the building, she was like, oh my God, we under attack. And, I heard like fire trucks and sirens going off all around the neighborhood, just nonstop, going around the neighborhood, cars flying, driving back and forth. And this girl who I was dating at the time, she called me up. She was like, come here. So I went to her building, went to the roof, and we watched from the roof. The Twin Towers come down, and she went to watch because her cousin worked the windows of the world.
Oh my God.
Yeah, single mom, worked the windows of the world as a waitress.
Was she?
They never found her.
Oh, of course, yeah.
Never found her.
That was the top floors. No one survived up there.
Yeah, they never found her. And so went to that first courthouse. That judge cleared my record. Just had to clear my record. Just had to pay like a court fee or fine or whatever. Then she took me to New York.
Nice
the New York judge. Yeah. Well, she advocated. She put in the work. She was like, she had on a dress uniform, everything.
Yeah.
And
good for her and good for him though too.
Yeah, man. And took me to the judge in New York. The courthouse was blocks away from Ground Zero. And
this is right at. Oh my God.
Yeah, this is they still doing cleanup. This is June 2002. Yeah.
You can actually remember the movie. What was it? 25 Hours. 25. By Spike Lee. Ed Norton's in it. Late Tony Saragusa.
Okay, I heard of it, but I never saw it. Yeah,
it's like he filmed it right after.
Oh, okay.
And so they show it, like you see it.
Yeah.
It wasn't in Brookfield Place, but they have a scene where it's right above Ground Zero. And I don't know, that movie, it's a obviously fictional movie that had a very real thing around it, but when people look at that and you realize like, oh my God, they were filming this, like that's what you were seeing. I mean, I get emotional going to that spot today. After that, how it looked, literally Ground Zero just rub. I mean, I can't even fathom that.
Yeah, and here's the crazy thing: the architect of the Twin Towers was my dad's friend, and
right.
He designed, and my dad was on the board, and he designed the Twin Towers that was supposed to stand in the center of Lagoon City.
Oh, my God.
And here I'm at the courthouse, blocks away from where Ground Zero was, and this woman standing in front of the judge like, yo, give this guy a chance.
That's some divine...
Can't make that up.
Yeah, you can't make that up, man.
So, and yeah, man, and the judge was like, all right, expunge your record. And paid the court fines, court fees, whatever it was. And then she went a step further, fudged the paperwork, sneaked me into the Navy. And that's how I got in. So I tell people all the time, I'm patriotic now. I wasn't then. As a matter of fact, I didn't want to join. Like I hated I hated the police. You know what I mean? I saw a lot of stuff happening. I got, and I associated anybody in the uniform as the police, whether you were Marine, Navy, paramedic, whatever. And so that was not a patriotic decision. That was a life or death decision. That for me was like, if I don't leave the Bronx, I'm going to end up dead or in prison. And this woman gave me this opportunity. She died 2 years after that too, of an autoimmune disease. Yeah, man. And yeah. And so, yeah, man, that was how I got in the Navy, man.
So you don't go to the SEALs first, though. What did you do at the beginning of your service?
Went to boot camp. After boot camp, went to A school, because I was in corpsman. Corpsman is like a Navy medic, and then from there I went to Naval Hospital Camp Pendleton.
Went to what?
Naval Hospital Camp Pendleton. So I was stationed at the hospital as a corpsman.
Oh, gotcha.
So I worked interestingly, I worked in a family practice clinic, which is crazy because my wife, when I met her, she was in residency as a family practice doctor. She's a family practice doctor now, but I was working with residents, family practice resident doctors, and checking in babies, doing vital signs, all that stuff. And when I got there, I told my LPO, which is the leading petty officer, like a supervisor, I said, hey, is there any way I could change my schedule so that I could train, because I'm trying to be a SEAL. I'm trying to go to SEAL training. And she said, sure. So I worked the morning clinic for 4 hours, and then I had 4 hours off in the afternoon to train, like whatever training I wanted to do. I had 4 hours, and then I would come back to the clinic and work 4 hours, the night clinic. So I'd work until essentially the clinic was shut down.
And how long were you doing that?
For a year.
For a year, and then you reapplied to the SEALs.
No, I reapplied. So I started training as soon as I got there, as soon as she gave me that 4 hour block. 6 months later, I qualified. So 6 months later,
right away.
So within that 6 months, I learned how to swim, good enough to pass the screener. I got my ASVAB. I had to retake the ASVAB. So
what's that?
ASVAB is like the SAT.
Okay.
So you got to score really high to get into special programs, whether it's BUDS or EOD. You can't be an idiot.
What goes into that test? Like math and reading, like an SAT, similar?
It's literally the SAT, a military version of SAT, but then they have like some mechanical, like comprehension stuff in there as well, and electrical stuff on there as well. But a lot of it is reading comprehension, math, algebra, all the stuff that you do in the SAT, because they want to kind of gauge your IQ to determine what job you get in the Navy, because they don't want somebody who's an idiot being a nuke working on a nuclear submarine. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that wouldn't make sense.
Yeah. In order that's the job in the Navy where you have pretty much the highest ASVAB score, or like near perfect ASVAB score, in order to qualify as a nuke. We call them nukes in the Navy because they work on the nuclear reactors on subs and ships. And so, and then like special programs kind of come after that. And so I retook the ASVAB, scored high enough to get into BUDS, and then I had packed on the weight, man. I went from not being able to do 1 pull-up to being able to do 30 pull-ups, not being able to do 10 push-ups or 20 push-ups to being able to do 100 push-ups, 100 sit-ups, and all the stuff that you have to do for the screener. And then went to BUDS. So I checked in January 2003 to Naval Hospital Camp Pendleton, qualified in July of 2003, and then was in BUDS in January 2004.
Quick.
Yeah, I put in the work.
And how long is BUDS again?
It's 6 months.
Right.
So it's 6 months. First 8 weeks. 8 weeks is first phase. So that's just like where they just hammer you, log PT, serve torture. I mean, it's just nonstop. They were trying to get guys to quit. And then in that 8 weeks, I think the third week is Hell Week. So Hell Week is where they keep you up for 6 days. Pretty much throw everything at you, make you do everything that you've been doing, but with no sleep, and they keep you wet the whole time.
When did someone die in front of you?
That was like the week before Hell Week. So we were on a conditioning run. Yeah. We were on a conditioning run. It was brutal. The condition runs in soft sand. It's just a kick in the nuts, because you got to keep up, and if you don't keep up, then you get put in what's called the goon squad. So that means that like after the run, or maybe in between the run, if you're too far back, then you get hammered. Like run to the surf, get wet, do push-ups, up and down the berm, boom, boom, boom. Like, and guys quit. because they're just like, oh, this is random. Because now you got to run soaking wet and sandy, which makes it even worse. And so we were in the goon. We at the end of the conditioning run, getting hammered in the goon squad, and this dude's heart just gave out.
Oh.
Rob Vetter. So he was a SWIC guy. So he was
a SWIC guy?
So yeah, so Navy has 2 special operations programs, SEALs and SWIC. So SWIC is I forgot what it stands for, but Special Warfare Combat Crewmen.
Okay.
And so they essentially, I think they evolved out of the Vietnam War. So they're essentially transport, right?
Yeah, you got it right. Combat craft crewmen.
Yep.
Got it.
So they're masters of the sea, and as it relates to insertion, extraction, they don't just work with SEALs. They work with other special operations groups that operate on the water. So as it relates to like inserting them and extracting them and providing fire support, all that kind of stuff, because they got the big mini guns and on there, and they got all kinds of other tricked out guns, big guns on their cannons and stuff. And so yeah, he was a former SWIC guy, and heart gave out. And yeah, man, I remember that was the first funeral I went to in my entire life. Like we started trying to provide, me and like a couple other corpsmen tried to provide CPR on him, and then the Buds medic came up, and he continued. He was able to get a pulse, get him back, but he had been out for so long by the time they got him to the hospital that he was pretty much a vegetable. He was on life support. He was on life support for like a week, and then or like maybe 3 or 4 days, and then his wife decided, there's nothing. Doctor said there's nothing. There's no coming back. So they pulled the plug. And then that next week, that was the first funeral I ever went to in my entire life, was his funeral. Never been. I didn't even go to my grandmother's funeral. But so I'll never forget that. It was in this military chapel on base, on Naval Air Station base. And yeah, that was heavy. But that was the course. The course is brutal. And I almost died. As a matter of fact, the first time I went through Hell Week with my class, I started Hell Week with pneumonia and sight. I was spitting up blood, but I didn't want to tell the instructors because I didn't want to start day 1 of first phase. Because
they put you right back to the beginning.
Day 1 of first, because you go through 3 weeks of first phase, and then the 4th week is Hell Week. Like you lose like a chunk of people in those first 3 weeks because it's brutal. And then so I didn't want to I already made it to Hell Week, which is hard. I didn't want to now have to start day 1, go on medical hold, and then start day 1 again. So I hid the injury. Yeah, man, about day and a half in, 2 days in, I started feeling even worse. My lungs were shredded wheat. Got to a point where we were doing Steel Pier, which is a evolution in Hell Week, where it's the coldest evolution in Hell Week. They lay you on a Steel Pier, make you jump in the bay, tread water. It's freezing cold. It's at night, like 2 a.m. Then you come out, take off your shirt, jump back in. So you do all that. And at that point, my core temperature was 88.7. Yeah. They drove me to Bud's Medical. Went through the rewarming drill.
How does that work?
It's just a process because they can't rewarm you too fast.
Yeah, because it'll shock your body.
Yeah, and so they have like warming blankets and towels like in this heated thing, and so they gradually put more and more on you. And they did that. Finally, my core temperature got back up, and from there they were like, "Yo, if you want to go back to Buzz, you want to quit?" And so I was like, "I'm not quitting." So I went back in, and as soon as I got there, they put me in the water. Surf torture. Then we had an evolution called base tour, where you got to run all around the base with the boat on your head. It's really brutal, and like all I remember is running and then waking up in the hospital. Yeah. So the guys reminded me, the guys who were in my boat crew told me, they was like, "Yo, dude, it was like somebody pulled a switch out of the computer. You went like you were running and your whole body locked up and you went bam." And then when I finally came to and was at the hospital, I think I came to in the ambulance, and then they took me to Bud's Medical, checked, they had an x-ray machine there, x-rayed my lungs. It was like, yo, this dude's lungs are done. I had pneumonia, sight, and rhabdo.
I don't even know what that is.
Rhabdomyolysis, people die from that. It's where your muscle tissue breaks down.
Ooh.
Yeah, and your body's, in some cases, your body just starts eating itself, and like the proteins and stuff gets into your, I think it's your kidneys or something like that, and then that's what causes your kidneys to stopped functioning well, and people have died from it. And so I was in the ICU for a few days, and then from there, finally got released, and then went back to Buds, and they was like, "Hey, good on you for not quitting, but you got to start day one over again."
Oh my God, they made you go all the way to the beginning because
so
of that.
I had to, because it was medical. If I would have made it past Wednesday of Hell Week, then I would have not had to start
Son
over
of
again.
a bitch.
So yeah, but the instructors were like, "Hey," they were apologetic. They were like, "Dude, we're super sorry. We didn't know that you were." They thought I was faking, because you get a lot of guys who, in their defense, you get a lot of guys who are not sick, but they don't want to quit. But they do want to quit.
Yes.
And so they, they play games, and they like, they're limping, and instructors, and finally, the instructors had enough, and they'll performance drop them. So they were on the verge of performance dropping me because they thought I was faking.
Yeah.
And so after I got back to Buds, they were like,
I understand that.
Yeah,
like, this is the highest level shit, you know?
Yeah. And when I got back, I remember the Master Chief of First Phase and the Senior Chief came in. Well, the Chief at the time came in, and they was like, "Yo, we're sorry, but we're super happy you didn't quit. That's what we look for in a program, man. Dude that's gonna go and like until they're dead, and then going back to, and then still go even after they're dead, right? And that I don't think I would have been able to do that if it wasn't for my upbringing, like we talked about earlier. Like that hardened me so much that even while being deathly sick and being screamed at by the instructors and told you're faking, like that didn't break me. Because if I would have quit and then went to medical, there's no coming back from that.
Yeah.
There's no, you're going to start First Phase over again. It's just like, oh, well, sorry, hey, but you rang the bell. There's no unringing the bell.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, man, start all over. Went through day one of First Phase again and watched a bunch of, 20, 30 guys quit again. And then started, got to Hell Week, made it through Hell Week. And then after Hell Week, I got performance role, two swims. So you have performance role is like an academic role. So they're not for a test, not like for a written test, but just for like, you have timed evolutions. And then you have timed evolutions, and you have certain pass-fail evolutions. So drown proofing is like a pass-fail evolution. It's where you have to, your hands are tied behind your back, your feet are tied together, and you got to bob water for a certain amount of time. Then you got to swim a certain amount of, feet. Then you got to.
Sounds easy.
Yeah. Then you got to tread water all with your hands and feet tied together, right? And so that's a pass-fail evolution. And you have the 50-meter underwater swim, which is a pass-fail evolution. These are all evolutions that you have to pass at First Phase, but then you have the timed evolution. So you have a 4-mile time run every week in Buds, and the passing time in First Phase is 32 minutes. You have a 2-mile timed ocean swim in First Phase. The passing time is 85 minutes. You have an O course, and the passing time, I think in First Phase is like 11 or 12 minutes, something like that. And so you had, at the time I was in Buds, you had to pass at least one of those timed evolutions in each phase in order to graduate to the next phase. And I passed everything except for the swims. I failed all my swims because even though I had just learned how to swim, but I didn't really. I learned how to swim good enough to pass the screening test. I didn't learn how to swim good enough to do 2 miles in the ocean against current, right? Yeah. And so after I made it through Hell Week, instructor was like, "Yo, we're not even going to even let you class back up right now. We're going to just put you in brown shirt rollback land and work with you on," which is like a whole program for guys who made it through Hell Week, and then work with you on your swims. And I was in that program for like 3 months or maybe 4 months. And then after the 4 months, I passed my first 2-mile time ocean swim. I made the time limit, and then class back up and with another class, and then got super prideful. I'm in like every class, I'm either one of 2 black dudes or like the only black dude in my class. So, I still got some of that street in me. I still got that, lack of affirmation complex in me, and so, that all played itself out in pride, kind of like what we discussed earlier, where I was just like, nobody can't tell me nothing. I made it through Africa. I made it through the Bronx. Yep. I'm one of the only black dudes in my class. I know how to swim. I'm in dive phase. I made it through Hell Week. You know what I mean? Like my head got so big, and like I just remember I would go partying, clubbing, and chasing girls, and like just like Kanye's West song was out, I want to say around that time. You can't tell me nothing. And that was like my theme song. That was I was destructive. And when I got to dive phase, I failed the first 2 swims, ocean swims, because the swim times I dropped from 85 minutes to 80 minutes in dive phase. And instead of working on what I needed to work on the weekend, I was out partying And then it got to a week of dive phase called Dive Week, where you got to do these different dive tests. You got to do a ditch and don, where you got to take off all your dive gear underwater in a specific procedure, swim up to the top, take a breath, swim back down, put all your dive gear on a specific procedure. Then you do that with a blacked out mask so you can't see. Then you do buddy gear exchange, where you got to take off your buddy's gear and put it on a specific procedure. And then he does the same thing. And then you do that in a blacked out mask. And then you have pool comp. And then you have this evolution called the tread, which is with twin 80 dive tanks, weight belt, dive gear. You got to keep your hands above water and tread water for 5 minutes. It literally feels like, at least for me, it feels like you're going to drown. It's tough, dude.
5 minutes.
5 minutes. And you got all this weight on. Your hands can't touch the water. If they touch the water, you fail. And yeah, man. And so I failed that 4 times, because you get every day at the end of the day after you do your dive, whether it's ditch and don, buddy gear exchange, whatever, you get a chance to do the tread at the end of the day. And so each Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, I failed the tread. And again, now it's all on me, because the instructors showed up the weekend before the tread, the 2 weekends before the tread, and then the weekend before the tread. They said, all right, guys, this is a tough one. Well, I'll be here to work with, instructors would they work with us on the weekends. They would show up at like 8 in the morning, not just to work with guys on the tread, but also other dive tests as well. And I was too busy waking up at some girl's house at 10, 11 a.m., that...
Aren't you, you're only like 22, 23 right now, right?
I'm like, around 22, maybe 21. I was 21. I think I was 21. Let's see. No, I turned 20 in boot camp. Turned 21 at the hospital. So yeah, I'm 21 because this is January 2004.
Yeah, you're so
21.
Young.
Yeah,
like that's the thing. Like I hear you being hard on yourself with it, but like I was a fucking idiot when I was 20. Like you're a Navy SEAL when you're 21. You know what I mean? Yeah. I guess you get a little kick in the ass because you fail some things and you make it longer on yourself. But,
Yeah, but at the end of the day too, a lot of it was pride driven. And yeah, man. So I went to academic review board, got kicked out of Buds. Got kicked out completely. Went to back to Camp Pendleton. This time I got stationed in 1st Marine Division with the grunts, and was humbling, but it was the humbling that I needed because I'm down at the bottom, bro. That grunt life is like legit. I remember we did a training exercise out in 29 Palms, which is like this hot desert out in California, and we finished our day. And they're like, all right, guys, it's time to start bedding down. It's like, looking around, we in the middle of like a bare desert. Like, all right, we're going back to the barracks? No, freaking sleep on the rocks. So we just freaking got like a mat, and so I slept on a rock. And that was all humbling, bro. That was all like, dang, man. Like, I put myself in this position. And long story short, ended up getting back to Buds a year and a half later. And yeah, made it through.
Toughened you up, for sure.
Yeah, humbled me for sure,
It happened
man.
how it's supposed to happen.
Yeah, exactly how it's supposed to happen. Exactly how it's supposed to happen. And that's why I believe that everything in my life has happened exactly how it's supposed to happen.
Do you know, you may not know this, this is kind of way out there, so if you don't, no problem. But do you know the average age of someone who first starts in the Navy SEALs? Like, who makes it?
I don't think, you know what? From what I recall, they've studied age groups, they've studied... the backgrounds of participants who for years they've tried to figure out what is it that these guys have to make it through that other guys don't have, and they haven't been able to figure that out. I mean, at one point they were like, oh, it's guys who come from like water backgrounds, whether it's water polo or swimming, and then thought, oh, there's guys in their late 20s and this guy, but regardless, when they look at each person, it's all different. There's no pattern, because you can't tell what's in the person's heart. You can't tell what's in the person's heart. And, I remember this, you show up to training and it's these guys that are like super skinny, super small, and people will look at them like, that dude's not, and that person standing tall, like at the end, like made it through, versus a guy, there was a guy in my class, my first class, he was a triathlete. Everybody knew, all the Buds instructors knew him. They was like, yo, this guy's going to make it. He's like, this is when triathlons became a big thing, and like Buds instructors were doing triathlons to stay in shape. And so they all knew him. Everybody was like, he was going to win. He was going to make it. Dude quit. It's like, and then here I am. He quit.
It's just something.
Yeah. And then here I am, a dude that like never swam in the Bronx, and I'm still there. So it's like you can't tell what's inside of a person's heart. Another crazy thing is you get guys who are like investment bankers or freaking lawyers or accountants. Like, it's the craziest thing. And they decided one day, you know what? I think I want to try that Navy SEAL thing. So you get guys like in their late 20s, early 30s who are like showing up, enlisted, not going in as officers. They're like, I'm just enlisted to be a SEAL.
Try.
Yeah, I mean, there were guys in my class who there was a guy in my class.
Bread.
There was a guy in my class who was a Rhodes Scholar. You know what I mean? You get a lot of guys from like Harvard, Yale, like Ivy League schools, very like guys from very affluent backgrounds who like show up. So it's very interesting the type of people that get in, but also the type of guys, how they're not able to pinpoint the type of guy to get through.
I don't think, at least of what we publicly know about that's available. I mean, I'm sure there's some things in the government we don't, but I'm not sure of all the different guys I've talked with on and off camera who get into the highest level types of government programs like this. I don't think there's been anything else I've come across that has the combination of psychological, intelligence, physical, and courage.
Yeah.
Like in whatever pot that is right there all together to have to make it. So it's not like there could be a few other, there definitely are a few other things that actually do have more prestige than the Navy SEAL. There's not much, but there's a few other things where it actually, ironically, might be a little easier once they've identified like the ideal type candidate to try out. Yeah. It's easier for them to make it because there's not, it's just a bizarre, very heavy combo. But that's why, the guys, there's a reason why guys like me gravitate towards listening to like what Navy SEAls have to say. Because there's a respect there for like, it's a bond, not only did this dude like serve the country and go do crazy shit, but just to get there, get the right to do that. I mean, you had to accomplish a lot.
And another big piece to it is you mentioned like the mental strength, psychological strength, all that other stuff, but another piece to it is the ability to operate and work as a team.
Yes.
Like that's what, every SEAL unit ends with the word team. SEAL team 3, SEAL team 4, SEAL, we don't even refer to each other as Navy SEALs. We refer to each other as team guys. Like, so when you hear somebody, is that a team guy? You know that's a SEAL that's asking that question. If a guy's like, I was a Navy SEAL and I know Navy SEAL Ricky, you're going to be like, that dude probably ain't no SEAL. We don't refer to each other as SEALs. We refer to each other as team guys, right? Yeah. And so that's another thing that weeds out a lot of guys because we have lived, at least I would say in the last 20, 30 years I've been around, we live in a very individualistic society and culture. Like we discussed earlier. Yes. We live in a society that is all about me, or just me and mine. That's why our country is so divided, because it's all about me and mine. And that's not about others. It's all about me. And we talked about how, sometimes it's not until for me, it wasn't until I was 26 that I began to realize that life isn't about me, it's about other people. And because we live in a very individualistic society, when guys show up to SEAL training and it's team-based, like, yes, we have to perform as individuals. And yes, when you quit by yourself for the most part, but it's a team-based environment. Like when you're doing log PT, you're doing log PT with 7 guys. Each guy has to carry his weight. When you're doing boats on heads, like each guy has to hold his head up erect. If not, if somebody ducks boat, you're going to jack up somebody's neck. There's been guys with fractured necks and doing boats on heads. Why are instructors using these tools? They're using these tools because they're trying to beat into us the importance of a team. It's about the guy to your right and the guy to your left. And if you operate with excellence in your role and the guy everybody else does as well, then the team as a whole is successful. And I think that that's another reason why you have a big attrition rate, not just in SEAL training, but even in other special programs, because it's not a Johnny Rambo world. Johnny Rambo does everything by himself. You know what I mean? This in all special operations communities, it's about a group of guys being able to work together to get the job done. And so you just get a lot of guys who show up and it's hard for them to grasp that concept. And they could be the best runners, the best swimmers, the best whatever, but they just can't operate within the team. They can't rely on a guy, and they can't have patience, and it's just that's where a lot of guys crumble. At least
and
from
that
what I saw.
it seems to me like listening to you explain that's maybe of all the skills the most important thing.
100%.
Yeah.
100%.
That these guys have.
You get guys who will have gotten to third phase, and they will get performance drop like the week before graduation because of that. Because throughout the entire course, we do peer evals. So every class, I think it's like every 2 or 3 weeks or whatever.
Oh, during buds.
In buds. And you'll get guys who will be, if you're consistently peered low throughout your entire tenure, and you're that guy where, people are, avoiding, and, they don't want to be around, and you're just an individual, right? We have a saying in our community, individuals fail, teams survive, right? And if you're an individual and instructors realize that, you'll get to third phase, you'll graduate the island a week before graduation. They'll be like, bye. Performance drop. You're not cut out to go to a team. There's been a bunch of guys who that happens a lot. Happened to. Yeah, that's happened a lot. I think there's a I don't even want to mention the guy name because I can't recall the entire story, but a well-known guy who apparently that happened to in buds. He's a big YouTuber guy, big social media guy. I'll tell you his name offline, but apparently that's what happened to him as well. But yeah, man, it's you got to be able to operate as a team.
Yeah, you guys also, on a side note here, the thing about the Navy SEALs is that the post-service community, like the Navy SEAL community, whoa, is that tight. I mean, you guys, because, you all do go through like the exact same thing. Yeah. But it's such a fraternity. Oh, 100%. I mean, I had the opportunity to go to, I think it's literally called the Navy SEAL Foundation. There was a gala back in 2017, and a friend of mine who was a really high up Marine gunnery sniper who used to cover for a lot of these teams, I think. I think that's what it was. He was like, yo, I'm going to this because a lot of my boys are going to it. They were Navy SEAls. And I had a chance to talk with a bunch of these guys, and I'm looking around the room, and there are people from the last like 50 years spread out. And there's just, it's hard to explain, but like people would understand if you were there. There's just a thing. And I've never been in front of something that was that serious. You know what I mean? It's a really special bond you guys have.
100%. I mean, I think that's what is it called? There's a term, the suffering, something about suffering. When people suffer together, they have these inseparable bonds. Or when people have experienced the same type of suffering, just like, Holocaust survivors, one Holocaust survivor will meet another Holocaust survivor that they've never met in person. They've never known each other, but they'll meet like 70, 80 years later, and it's like they're the best of friends. They have this automatic bond. It's because that shared suffering. They went through that same suffering together, and I think that's what brings us together. And that's why when I was on the show Special Forces Fox, people asked me when I did the first season, they were like, dude, like, how many times have you guys all worked together? I was like, we ain't really worked together much. Actually, this is when I was doing the UK version of the show. They were like, man, it seems like you guys have worked together or practiced together a long time before you shot the show together. And it was like, no, we just have a similar shared suffering. We have a training that's the tip of the spear, and we all bought into it, and we all understand if I go right, so-and-so is going to go left. You know what I mean? So we don't need to have a conversation. We know how to read and react and flow off of each other. And that's why we're able to work well together, because we all have that same level of training. Same thing when it came to the Fox show. We all were able to work together, and we all worked smoothly because we all have that same level of training where we could read and react. And we know I don't need to. It's just like going on the op. You're not talking on the op. It's all like nonverbal cues. It's all, hand signals. It's all because you got to be sneaky, peeky, quiet, right? And so a lot of what we do comes from that training. We train to contingencies as well. So, yeah, man, that is that's a bond that is inseparable. I worked on the plane. So funny, when I worked on the movie The Plane, there was another SEAL on there, Pete Scoble, and great dude. His son is a super famous actor. I forgot his son's. I can't remember his son's first name, but his son's really, really good. Scoble, yeah. So he was in the Adam Project. He was in. He's the new Percy Jackson for Disney.
I don't know if I know the name. The Adam Walker Scoble?
Walker, yeah, Walker. Huh. So Walker is Pete's son.
He's not one of the Stranger Things kids, is he?
No.
Okay, I never watched that show. It just feels like every kid who comes up was in fucking Stranger Things.
Nah, but he's a great kid, man. But when we went to go shoot plane together in Puerto Rico, it was like we had the combat scenes and all that, and it was just like, all right, we're gonna do this. We didn't have to talk about it. Like the stunt coordinator's like, hey, you should gotta do this. The director's like, it got to a point. The director's like, all right, we know he's a French guy. He's a French guy, Jean French. He was like, yeah, I know. You guys know what you are doing. Go do it. And me and Pete, we just kept shoot, move, communicate, drop, man. But like, let's do this, do that, and it all worked well together. And we all had. It wasn't no competition. It wasn't no. It was instant brotherhood. Yeah, it's like so. Same thing with our consulting company. We own a consulting company where we run pro athletes, collegiate athletes, and Olympians and corporations through mental toughness, critical thinking, team building, leadership training, all principles that we have to know in our community that translate well into business. And all the guys that I know, like they all have day jobs. So sometimes I can't find the same SEAL to go do a job with me. Like we did this big pharmaceutical company back in January, and it's like, all right, need another SEAL. All right, who's available? All right, I'm not available, but I know this guy's available. All right, boom. Hey, Ty, come do this job with me. Ty comes do the job, works flawlessly because we know, like, you know what I mean? Yeah. And so, yeah, man, I can't think of another job or another field that has that blessing, I want to say, because it truly is a blessing, man.
Are you really tight with the guys you graduated with who became your team today?
Oh, yeah, 100%. Yeah, they still talk to them. As a matter of fact, I had a 2-hour call with one of my boys a few weeks ago. It's crazy. The conversations are so different now because it's like, dude, my kids and this and that, I'm dealing with this, and my daughter's dating. And so it's so interesting because we all know each other's kids. And so it's like the conversations are different, but it's like, damn, we're getting old, man. It's so crazy because we think about, I think about, being young. When you think about that time, it's like 20, late 20s, mid to late 20s in the teens, early 30s in the teens. And then another thing I think about a lot too is, my teammates who passed away, like, Charlie Keating and Pat Feeks and those guys, and just thinking about the fact that they never had a chance to have kids. That's something that gets me. So, every time, like, it's not every time, but a good number of times when I'm looking at my kids, like, they come to mind, especially when my kids come into my office, because I have all the guys, not all the guys, but a good number of the guys who I serve with who passed away on operations. I have like a memorial wall in my office, so every day I'm seeing their faces every single day, and my kids come in the office and come give me a hug or say they got back from school or whatever the case may be, and I look for my kids as I look at them as they leave my office. I see that wall, and I just think about those guys who didn't get a chance to have kids and how their sacrifice paved the way for me and paved the way for others, and so that bond transcends life and death as well.
Yeah.
They still stick with you even to this day.
That's awesome you have that, though.
Yeah.
I mean, for a perspective check, you guys, it's like when you're in the SEALs, you're born into that because like you're going to be going into battle.
Oh, yeah.
Most dangerous places, you're going to know guys that don't make it back.
Yeah.
Or it could be you that doesn't make it back.
Yeah.
It's a heavy, heavy thing.
Yeah, man.
But what did you, when you got in, like, what was your specialty? What did they bring you into?
Yeah, so I was a corpsman. So I had already been a corpsman.
Yes.
So that was automatic for the most part. And then I was a human guy. So
human intel.
Human stands for, it's an acronym, means human intelligence. And so it was cool, man. You got to go to different schools and learn about running sources and tradecraft stuff, and just being able to collect intelligence via another human being. You know what I mean? And
now, how is this? Can we dig into this a little bit? Like how this is different from, being a CIA case officer or something like that. Like, what does a mission look like to you how long are we talking? Are you had talked to me in the car earlier about the fact that like right when you came in, you inherited a lot of sources, right? So there aren't necessarily right away people you have to make sources, but how are you making sources? Are you doing a lot of plainclothes stuff? You know, meetings? Like how does it work?
Yeah. So for me, my experience, I can't really go into too much of the differences between case officers and. Because I was never a case officer. I know guys who were, but I was never a case officer. I can't speak to that. I don't want to say something people like that guy doesn't know, he's an idiot. But yeah, man, it's I think I know the differences in the agency. They refer to as assets. In our world, they're referred to as sources. In policing world, they're referred to as informants. So essentially, what I can assume for the other two is you're utilizing people to help collect intelligence for you, right? To help get information for you that you need in order to build an intelligence package, or it might just be to find out what the atmospherics are. Like how's everybody in this area feeling? What's the tone? Are people upset with the political climate? What's going on? Get me some on the ground information so that way I can have a good sense on how to move, or what decisions I need to how to move, what information I need to pass up the flagpole, so to speak, right? And so essentially it's collecting information to get a job done, and the other two entities that I mentioned, case officers, DIA, as well as maybe even FBI to a certain extent, they refer to them as assets, and policing world refers to them as informants. But for the most part, I think we're all trying to do the same job.
Now, how fast were you after you're in your team, you make it through, you're active? How fast were you deployed to active zones?
So I was, after I graduated from SQT, I went through a workup. So we do a workup. So you get to your team, do a workup. First part of your workup is pro-dev, professional development. So that's about 3 months, right?
And what does that consist of?
That's where you go to your specialty school. So if you already have a specialization, you go that. If you don't have a specialization, then you go to you go to an advanced. So the snipers will go to advanced sniper school, guys who are already snipers. Or a breacher can go to advanced breacher school. Or if like you're a human guy, like when I got back from a deployment, I went to TSO. So TSO is like a tactical surveillance course, right? So that's what pro-dev is where you're going to your school that speaks to your specialty or the specialty that you're going to have. And then after that, then you go through what's called ULT, unit level training. So your team comes together and everybody goes, you do skydiving as a team. You do diving as a team, like hitting a target. You do CQC as a platoon. You do land warfare. You hit all of these blocks of training as a team, and you're graded. Like your team is graded, and your platoon is graded. And if they don't perform well, your platoon could get disbanded and not even freaking be able to make a deployment. And head chef will for sure be fired. So it's like one of those things where you have to perform. It's not just like, oh, let's just go do this training to check a box. It's like, no, dude, you guys are going to go to war, so you better get it right before you can go do the job, right? So you're always being graded from the time you're in Buzz to the time
you're never locked in is the point.
Exactly. We have a saying in our community, earn your trident every day, right? Yep. And then after that, you go through what's called SIT. And then around SIT, that's when you kind of find out where you're going to go. And so you train as a team to that specialty, or if it's if you find out that you need more human guys, or you need another sniper, because wherever you're going to go, like they need more guys to carry out sniper related operations, then those guys will be sent to those schools to fill those needs, and then you pump out.
I'm definitely going to fuck up the term if I try to go back to something you said in there, but the school you went to for yours, which was human intel in this case.
Yeah, it was another name for it, but just for this.
And it was like 3 months, you said?
No, TSO was 3 or 4 months.
What does TSO stand for?
Tactical Surveillance Operations.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you go there. Is this... maybe I missed this a little bit, but did you already had upon graduating Buds, you already had some sort of background with human? No, this was fresh, and they said we're going to make you this.
You have to go to the school, yeah.
Okay.
So
what did that comprise of? Like what
So one, it comprises of a screening test. I can't go into details about the screening test, but it's not physical. It's not like you're doing push-ups or anything like that. It's very heady.
What about the?
It's very like
the fake phones record coming up again.
What do you mean?
When you were selling the fake phones, was that a problem?
No.
Okay, you're good at this.
I was good. Yeah, dude, for a long period of time, bro. Like every time I got called into an office, or every time like when I was in boot camp, I was sweating. I thought, all right, this is it. So that followed me for a long time, man. And it sucks, man. That's the one thing when you do wrong, man. Even when you're repentant, man, it still can follow you for a long time.
Don't know.
And so that's So after you do the very heady screening test, it's interesting because you get this like 3 guys in a room, and it's very challenging. Then you go to the course if you pass that screening process.
And what kinds of things? What kinds of things? If you can't talk about it, you can't talk about it.
Yeah, I can't talk about the
So
screening.
you can't really go through not the screening, but like on the course, like
on the course.
Are they like I've had Joe Ted I in here. I've had Andrew Bustamante, Jim Lawler, all guys with different CIA backgrounds. Sean Ryan. They talk about like being dropped into, because I'm thinking just human intel right now. They talk about surveillance drilling, like being dropped into cities in the U.S. where they have set up drills to discover stuff. Like, were you doing anything like that?
So that
TSO.
is that. So the human course is like the basic entry level course on running sources. Just leave it at that. You know what I mean? Just collecting information from meeting the person, building a relationship with the person, and collecting information from that person. Like that's like the best, safest way I probably would like to describe it. And then the biggest part of it, though, a lot of people don't realize, is the writing side of it. That's the toughest part of the course.
What do you mean by the writing side of it?
So everything you do, you have your physical side of it where you go out and you meet your source and do all of that stuff, and then you come back, but then you also have a writing side of it, because you got to remember, why are you going to meet with these people? You're going to go meet with these people because you're trying to collect intelligence, okay? That intelligence can't stay in your head. It has to be documented. And you have to, and that's where I learned visual storytelling, because because they teach you how to write in a way where you write a report today, somebody could pick up that report 10 years from now and read it as though those events are happening right there and then. So it's a very tough literary course. That's the biggest part of it. You spend more hours in a blacked out window room writing and sketching, which is another part of it, than you do the other side of it. Because and the thing is, you got to memorize everything, because when you leave the area where you're doing this writing, everything outside is bad guy territory, notionally, just notionally. Yeah. And so the thinking is, if you go meet with somebody and you're taking notes, and then you start heading back, and then somebody pulls you over, foreign government pulls you over, foreign police or whatever country you're in pulls you over, and you got all these notes. Oh, like there's where the nuclear bomb is, and there's where this is, and there's where that is. Oh, yeah. And you said you were Scandinavian? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
You're done. So you got to memorize everything. And then you got to go back and you got to document it. And that's the hard, and that's why a lot of guys don't like going that route, which I understand, because last thing you want to do when you're downrange, downtime, is write long intelligence reports.
Yeah, but it's critical.
But it's critical. And the interesting thing is, my mom prepared me for that. Because remember, I told you my mom was a creative writer.
I forgot about that.
And my mom would make my brother and I read New York Times articles and books and write reports. And if our reports weren't near perfect, she would make us pick another article or another book and start all over again. And we couldn't go outside to play, especially in the summertime. We couldn't go outside to play unless our reports were done and perfect. So I grew up writing. As a matter of fact,
You had a good mom, man.
Yeah, man. My mom's a beast. And the thing is, for her, you know, a lot of parents put like a baseball bat, baseball glove in their kids' hands, or a basketball, or, you know, jujitsu outfit or whatever. My mom put a pen and paper in my brother's hands, because she was of the mindset that if you know how to articulate your thoughts in a literary format, or if you can articulate somebody else's thoughts in a literary format, you will never be without a job. You will always have a job. And so when I got to the teams and I found out about HUMINT, and when my OIC was like, who wants to go? And most of the guys were like, nah, I don't want to do it. Nah, because they wanted to do they wanted to be the sniper. They wanted to be, and that's all cool. I was just like, my hand shot up, and I was just like, I don't want to do that, because I love writing. You know what I mean? I love storytelling. I just love being able to get what's outside of my head onto the page. You know what I mean? I know people joke about, oh, SEALs write books, but the reality is, you know, a lot of guys don't, you know, because they have other people writing for them. But me, I'm a writer. I'm a storyteller. Like, I write my book.
Clearly. Yeah. Once again, link in description. Go buy it. Chameleon.
I write my screenplays. You know, I don't have a... So funny, I get so many people like, you wrote, who was your ghostwriter on Transform because it was all well written? I was like, I don't have a ghostwriter, dude. I sat and freaking wrote that book and bled over that book. And the crazy thing is, the publisher, they didn't have confidence in me because it was my first book. And so they hired an editor. And I remember I had the first meeting with the editor, and she was like, you know, they hired me for like 5-6 months to edit this book. And she was like, but I don't think it's going to take that. We edited the book in like 3 weeks.
Wow.
2-3 weeks. That's how fast it all happened. And an interesting thing is, my publisher didn't want my first book to be over. They didn't want my first book to be over 80,000 words. I had to fight them to get it up to 130,000 words, show them comps and everything. And so when I was writing the book, I really focused on keeping it under 130,000 words. And when the editor read it, she was like, why didn't you go further on this part of the story? Why didn't you expand on this? And I was like, my publisher told me I'd be in breach of contract. And she said, what? She went back to the publisher. It was like, hey, we need more. Remi needs more space. He needs to tell a little bit more about this story when it relates to his grandmother here. And that's how, you know, so like that served what my mom did served me well. And everything that I do, like even when I'm working on Special Forces Fox, like we had to write those briefs. Like I had to write my briefs, like that I gave on camera. Like I had to write them, memorize them.
You did all that.
Yeah. It's like all the producers would be like, all right, you need to give a brief on, like, you know, they're going to get gas, so give them a brief on that and just make it look cool. So you got to write all that stuff out. You know what I mean? Even when my speeches, I write all that stuff out and memorize them. Like, you know, we just landed a TV show. We were able to sell a TV show to a major production company. It's an unscripted TV show, and we got that job because I wrote the freaking the pitch for it. Right. So writing, my mom was right. You know, she had the key. You know, and the key was, hey, if you can write, you'll never be without a job. And that served me in the community, and that's what helped me do my job when I was downrange, actually running sources and having to now write these reports. And now these reports are going up the chain of command, and now these reports are going to other people outside of the military, and I'm not looking like an idiot. Well,
you I mean, because the thing, not to bury the lead with this, but out front you were talking about how for the writing to happen, though, you were trained to be able to picture things and compartmentalize them to be able to write it down later.
Yeah.
So maybe it's like, okay, well, I need to get the fuck... I'm just making one up right now. Correct me if I'm wrong. But like maybe it's like, all right, I need to get the fuck out of here. I won't be able to write for 8 hours or something. I'll be at this place tonight and I can do it. Like what kinds of skills, because this is relatable to other things in normal people's lives like mine, like what kinds of... How did you find a way to so perfectly visually remember everything and then compartmentalize it to put it in a perfect report?
I've always had a very photogenic memory. I think that I can't really say that it was like something that I learned. I wish I had a simple formula that I could give to somebody and be like, I did this, and this. I've just always had a photogenic memory. And no, you know what? I correct myself. I've always worked that muscle, whether directly or indirectly. I've always just like, I think the gift was there because my dad, we didn't go into it, but my grandfather had like 9 wives. and yeah, my dad's father.
Grandpa was balling.
Yeah, and he kept on having daughters. My dad was the firstborn son to my grandfather, and my grandfather, not only was he a Yoruba chief, but he was also Muslim. So my father memorized the Quran at a very early age.
Memorized the Quran.
The Quran, yeah, at a very
How many
early
fucking
age.
pages is that?
I don't know. I don't know. I've never read the Quran, but he memorized the Quran at an early age. Fast forward, after my grandfather died, the wives dispersed to different parts of Nigeria. My dad went down to the south of Nigeria, Lagos, and there were Christian missionaries there. And not only did they teach the Bible, but they taught like math and science and literature and all of those things. My dad memorized the Bible. And my dad was able to memorize mathematical equations and all these different things to the point where the missionaries like, dude, like this guy's
your dad was gifted.
Genius. Yeah. And so I think that I don't think I have his level of genius, but I think that I inherited
something.
Part of that.
Yeah.
Part of that, ability to memorize things or see a problem, but in my mind, because my dad was an engineer as well, so part of that is being able to see a problem and figure out a solution, figure out a way. And so that's what I've always, I think that a lot of it came from my dad, but then a lot of it came from me working that muscle, being intentional about working that muscle, whether not intentional, but whether directly or indirectly working that muscle to memorize and remember things. Even now, I memorize stuff. I have this list of stuff that I go through all the time where I'm always trying to make sure, is this fresh? Is this correct? And I'm double checking to make sure, is this right? Is this on point? Just to keep working that muscle, because that goes into acting as well, right? Like you got to memorize your lines.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You got to know your lines. And then me as a writer director now, I have a saying, and this came out of my time serving in the military: a great leader will never make you do something or not do something that they have not done or they are not willing to do.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Love that.
And I, my end goal in life is to be a writer director. That's why I directed the short. That's why I directed a short film, companion film for Chameleon, and I got the other feature film that I'm going to be doing. And how can I expect actors to memorize lines, especially lines of monologues that I'm writing? You know what I mean? Like when I write these long speeches, how can I expect an actor or actress to memorize that and deliver a performance if I'm not doing it?
Right.
If I haven't done it, if I haven't put myself in a position to be able to, memorize things and be able to regurgitate those things and get them out to the space, like that's hypocritical. So I think that's another part of it for me, and why I'm always working that muscle, that memorization muscle, or that muscle of finding a solution to a problem. We have our apparel company, Kejo, and all our shirts have different sayings, and we have this one saying. Our first shirt that we launched with was "Solutions greater than excuses." Finding the solution instead of coming up with an excuse as to why something doesn't work. Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, you have that real that team's theme from the Navy SEALs, clearly. But I that is one of my favorite things ever. The idea I'll never ask someone to do something that I haven't done myself, or at the very least wouldn't do myself.
Exactly.
And I keep myself in check with that every day.
Yeah.
Because I built this myself for a long time, with the help of great people like you agreeing to come in here, of course. Yeah. But now I have a couple contractors who are working on my second and third channel with me to edit things, and I'm OCD as fuck. Right? There's a certain way I want things, and I'm a part of. They're not just editing it. I'm a part of the process, and I'm always checking that when I ask them to do something. And it could be something as simple as like, and Alessi, if he's listening, will laugh at this one, but it could be as simple as, yo, that text on the thumbnail, we have 2 lines. That line, there needs to be like 6 pixels of space instead of 8 in between there. And I know that because my dumb ass is making the thumbnail for the episode right now where I'm doing the same thing. Right? And the minute I ask him something, and this hasn't happened yet, but the minute I'll go to ask him something where I'm like, wait, I never done that before, I know I'm going to stop and I'm going to say, I'll just fucking take care of that. You know what I mean? There's, and that's, I guess that's something that came through doing what I do, but you learn that from life and death situations. So it's easy for you to do it, frankly, with the things you do now. It's not as high stakes either.
And I learned that having bad leaders as well in the military, not just like life and death, but like even like, dude, I remember we doing some training thing with the Marines, and this out of shape sergeant was like, get up top there. Get up top there. You got to get up that mountain and provide cover and fire. And he's huffing and puffing up the hill. And like when I say, yo, this hill is like steep, bro. Yeah. And by the time I got to, it was like somebody took razor blades to my quad muscles. Like that's how sore my muscles were. And he's like getting on us, and we're just like, dude, you're not even, lead from the front, bro.
Yes.
Like, lead from the front. Yes. Like, you're telling us to do this, and you're freaking yelling at us, berating us down there. And you would die if you even tried to get to the top.
Yep.
And, like, it was running into situations like that infuriated me, but showed me what not to do. So, yeah, it was life and death situations at times, but it was also having bad examples. Another thing is, like, that I learned in the military is being on a non-soft side and then being on a soft side is, like, you know, taking a genuine interest in those you lead. You know what I mean? Like, it's not about just them being a stepping stone to get to the next rank or get to the next level. It's like, yo, I really care about you. And I remember having leaders who, they just saw me as a stepping stone, or other guys as a stepping stone. They didn't see me as an actual person. They didn't take a genuine interest. And yeah, I did my job. Like, I did my job. But on the flip side, I remember having an OIC in the teams. That dude...
What's an OIC?
Officer in charge. So in charge of the platoon. That dude took a genuine interest in every single one of us. He knew our mom's name. He knew what we were going through in our personal life. He wasn't doing that like to get into our business, but just so he had an understanding of us so that he could better lead us. And because he took a genuine interest in us, like, bro, I was willing to run, not just meet the standard, but run through walls because for him to get the job done, because I knew that he cared about me. And that was another thing that came out of my time serving in the military. Another thing that I try to apply now, and it's very disheartening when I find myself in business situations, because where it's like when I see the people not take interest or care about not even people below them, but people on the same level as them. You know what I mean? It's just like, bro, that's not the way business is done. You know
I don't know why so many people are like that. There is a common pattern, and it's not to, I don't like to paint like all negative views. There's a lot of great people who are practicing exactly like you are right now, and shout out to all those people. Yeah. But, you know, in my experience in the business world, which is less than yours, I'm younger than you, but I've seen enough to be able to say this confidently. Yeah. You see a lot of people who have stepped on people or stepped over people to get where they are. Yep. And, you know, it's not as simple as, but the bad guy wins in life because they got a lot of money. You know, they're miserable sons of bitches. Yep. Yep. And that's their payment, and no one fucking loves them, and they're going to die alone. Yep. And that's 100%. A sad thing. Yep. I don't wish that upon them. But, you know, to me, I just always thought, like, why would you ever let personal bullshit, personal goals at the expense of other people, money get in the way of not just business, by the way, but like family and stuff. That's the worst. Yeah. When you see that and people will step on their own kind, their own people, I should say. Yeah, man. Like, it just offends something in the human spirit to me. Yeah. I don't know.
No, I agree, bro. I agree. And I've seen, you know, working in the publishing world. I mean, Brad knows, he's been with me for 5 years, you know, working in entertainment. It's you see a lot of things, man, where it's just like, sometimes we ask ourselves, man, why are we even still doing this? Yeah. Like, we could be find success in other stuff. Like, you know what I mean? We talk about that all the time, and it's like, what's the goal? You know, the goal for us is to be able to tell stories that are going to impact people. And, you know, because going back to what we talked about with the whole human trafficking thing, if it's a global issue, it's going to take a global response. And the best way to have a global response is by being able to tell a story in a fashion that appeals to people, in a fashion where people can sit down, view, and consume it. And so that's what keeps me in this fight. That's what keeps me, like, persevering, because it's, I mean, dude, every day I have a fight, dude. Not every day, almost every moment is a battle in my head, because I'm juggling so much stuff. And I'm trying, and I'm doing the right thing, trying to do the right thing, but then I run into people that stab me in my back. I run into people who betray me. I run into people who don't have the same level of it, who have no integrity at all, but portray as though they have. I run into, you know, just things happen, And that messes with my mind a lot. You know what I'm saying? And then the stress, and then being a father, and then having kids, and then all of these different things. So like, when I'm not, the worst thing for me sometimes is to just be in my own head.
For everyone.
You know what I'm saying? Because it's a battle. But for me, it's about what's the end result? What's the goal? I know that my goal, Brad's goal, our intention, sure, your goal, your intention is to impact people, to try and make the world a better place, whatever that may mean, you know, and at whatever level we could do that with the platforms that we have. And that's the only thing that keeps me in the fight. Because
you know what though, people will get lost. I want to give you credit for something that is even at the core of what you're saying before. You're talking about all the things you do publicly, and I mean actor, writer, director, former Navy SEAL, like the list goes on and on. But like you talked earlier with me about your kids and the values you're instilling in them, you and your wife, and how you do that. You're winning at home first.
Yes.
Your legacy is putting them out to be even better people than a better person than even you were. Yeah. And so I think a lot of people in your position, not you, but like they'll preach about it because maybe they have a platform or something. Right? And they can say things that look pretty fucking good in a 60-second clip.
Yep.
But you get them off camera, you send them home, they're fucked up.
Exactly.
Their family's fucked up. Maybe their wife left them because, and their wife was right to leave them because they gave them no time.
Yep.
So it seems like, I want to give you that credit, like right here on the podcast, it seems like you have your priorities in check, and that's the best example is through example, you know, or the best teaching point, I'm sorry, is through the example you said, and I think you're setting a great example at home for your kids.
I'm trying. That's the goal, man, because like I said earlier, if my kids suck at life, if my marriage is falling apart, and but I'm making all of this money and have all of this stuff going on, it's all worthless.
It's worthless.
100%. You know what I mean? It's all worthless. You know what I'm saying?
Well, we got on. I love that tangent right there, but we got off what we were talking about, so I wanted to go back to that. But you were talking about the intelligence reports and how you got to be able to write them down and stuff. What goes into a great intelligence report? Like what makes something that's like, ooh, they're gonna use this and they're gonna love it?
It's just clarity. It's just simple. It's just being simple and clear. You know, it's not rocket science. It's not like it's a formula or anything. It's just like writing in a fashion that's linear, right? Not jumping around, like having like a set structure where a person, okay, here I am in the story or the meeting that this person was was beginning, middle, end, just like a screenplay, right? But then, and it's in a similar fashion as a screenplay. And I think that this is what helped me as a screenwriter is clarity, simplistic. Like in a book, you have unlimited pages almost in comparison to a screenplay. You could write long monologues. You could write long descriptions. And there she was in the beautiful forest, and the trees were glistening, and all of this other stuff. And people get that because you're painting that picture, but you don't have that in a script. In a script, you have to be able to paint that picture, but with less words and in a simplistic way. And I think that that's what makes the best intel reports, are the structured. And when I say structured, I don't mean like going into crazy writing structure. I'm just talking about simple beginning. This is the beginning part of the meeting. This is how he or she was when we met. This was what I recognized. This is what, and then just going and then all the way through, and then this is the end. And obviously in that is the information that they provide and all that other stuff. And then this is the end. You know, linear fashion, simple and clear. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And what did they teach you about psychological profiling of people? I mean, a huge part of any intelligence, I think we can all kind of surmise this, is that you got to know people better than pretty much everyone else. Like what kinds of things did they teach you about people's like pain points or hit points to be able to take advantage of?
Body language, being able to read body language, prying into a person's motivation by asking a lot of questions, you know, and when the biggest thing is when somebody says something, it's easy to throw away. It's easy to get an answer, and feel as a person that's receiving the information that that's enough, when there's still something there that you could really pull out. right? It's just essentially being a good reporter, being a good reporter. And so, but body language is a big part of it. And then, like I said, being able to recognize. We did, man, the class I did on this, you got to remember, this is years ago, so I can't remember in detail everything. The biggest thing that I remember is when I was in those classes on how to read people and how to figure out whether somebody was telling the truth or not, and all of these different things that relates to making sure that we're getting the proper intel. I already felt like I knew it all. And I don't mean that in a prideful way.
No, I understand what you mean. Yeah.
I felt like all I was now getting was the terms that go along with what I was doing. Because I had been doing it for years.
Yes.
In New York City.
Yes. 100%.
I had been doing it. I've been reading about. I've been able to tell. Okay, this guy that's doing this car boxing, just walk past him. Don't even pay him any mind, because as soon as you give him a second of your time, that's the bait. He's going to reel you in. You're going to get hustled. That's when the hustle's going to start. Somebody's going to be his back. Or when you're on a train, and you don't just sit and focus on what's in front of you. You need to be always kind of scanning around, looking around, reading the room, reading who's on the train, looking through the window to see who's down another car down, a homeless person, a crazy person that's about to come down, come through your train, whatever. I forgot, the train door or whatever, to come into your train section. And then, do you make eye contact? Do you not make eye contact? You're going to have to figure that out as soon as you look at that person. Right? You're going to have to make eye contact. You're going to have to look at that person before that person recognizes you, look, and make a decision. Read that person really quick, make a decision. Is the decision I'm going to get off this train? Or is the decision I'm going to stay put? Is the decision I'm going to stand up because I'm in a position where I won't be able to defend myself fast? Yeah. Right? These are all things. I lived that. I mean, from the time I was, I don't want to say 5 because I was young, but from the time I was like 7, 8 years old, all the way to the time I was 20 years old, I lived all of that. So now when I got into the classroom, all I was doing was putting the titles behind what it was I had been doing.
It's almost like you could play the instruments like a genius in the orchestra. You just couldn't read the music. You didn't have to. You just knew it.
Yeah, I just knew it.
Yeah.
I just knew it. And that's why it's like hard for me to be like, oh, this is what they taught, and this is what they taught. And this is just like, no, it's just stuff that I did. And I can't remember, I mean, again, this is over 15, 16 years ago too. So,
but still, it's like with things like this, all the things they could teach you, it's not like you could just do calculations on the spot simultaneously of all this stuff. You kind of have to be trained to have a second sense to amalgamate it all, put it together, and know like, ooh, go time, not go time.
And then, and then another thing too was when I got to some of these countries, it was like, I felt like I can identify with these guys.
What do you mean?
Because, as I mentioned offline, less than 1% of Navy SEALs are African American, right? Like, I don't know my exact number, but I was like around the 50th, somewhere around the 50th African American SEAL in the history of the team since 1962, right? Class I graduated started with 270, 29 graduated. I was the only black guy in my class. And that's the way it is like almost every class. And then once you get into your specialty, whether it's a sniper, whether it's a breacher, because there's not that many African Americans, then once you get into the specialization program, it's the number of African Americans is even far less than, it's a percentage of a percentage, right? Yeah. And so when I would get overseas, I remember the first time there's these guys, one of the guys, I think, I can't remember if he went, I know he went to Ivy League school. I can't remember if it was Harvard or Yale, whatever. He was a human guy as well. And you're doing a turnover op and he's talking to them and I'm watching because I'm observing, I'm not in the room. I'm like watching on the feed. And I'm just like I see something there. Like I felt like I could identify. There were things that I felt like I was able to see that other guys weren't able to see. Not every guy, but other guys weren't able to see. Not because they weren't good at what they did. They were great at what they did, but because they didn't have the background that I had.
Yes.
Right?
Environment.
So they would ask a question in a way that was like the way we were taught to ask the question. Right? And they were good at what they did. And they, more chances than none, got the information that was required to be gotten. But then when I went into the room with the same source, different day or situation, whatever the case may be, there was this connection. I grew up in a volatile environment. This dude is in a volatile environment. I grew up poor, not rich, poor. This dude grew up poor. He ain't rich, right? You know, I grew up in tribalism in Nigeria. There's a lot of tribalism. There's a lot of tribalism here in America, but there's a lot in Nigeria. There's a lot of tribalism in the countries that I went to. So to them, this is different hood, but still the hood. You know what I'm saying? So when I would go into the room, it was just, and interestingly, they were surprised when they would see me. Because they never, like when I would come in for the first time for turnover, they'd be like, I got pictures, you know, I'll show you offline, but I got pictures with dudes, because it's like black guy, because they watch all of the, you know, American movies with subtitles, of course, but they watch Eddie Murphy, so they know who Eddie Murphy, Chris Tucker, and all of these guys are, and they're laughing. I remember going into a meeting, my first meeting with one source, he's like, hey, Eddie Murphy, right? Because I was smiling and stuff like that, but you know what? I use that to my advantage. By, you know, playing that up. Oh, you like Eddie Murphy? Oh, I can do Eddie Murphy. What's up? I can do Martin Lawrence and that would break ice.
Yeah.
You know, whereas a guy who's from Harvard, Frogman, went to the school, he ain't gonna go in there and be like, yo, what up? But I could do that, and I know how far to go with that and when to dial it back and get down in business, because I feel like I have that connection because we're
makes sense
from this, you know, same, both from the hood, but different type of hood. And when I say hood, I just mean like from a very similar backgrounds, you know, in spirit, not in actuality. You know what I mean?
And you were serving in the teams for 8 years. Or I'm just thinking of this as you're giving that answer. Like, are you allowed to say where you were at all?
I just try to be vague just because of the fact that I was doing a human thing. So Middle East. Okay. I just try to be vague there. Just
we can use our imaginations on that one. Yeah. So how often were you deployed over there versus back home time off? Like, what was there a set kind of schedule or?
So the way it works is you do your work up, deploy, do your work up, deploy, do your work up, deploy. So it's that. So it's about, I want to say it's like 18 months work up. When you get back from deployment, you have like a vacation, and then like we call it leave, and then depending on where you're going, and it's about 6 to 8 month deployment. Okay. So the deployments I did were about 6 to 7 months. So I would say 7 months the longest, just because like we have like what's called ADVON. So ADVON is like the advance. It's your whole platoon won't go, but like a part of your platoon will go. ADVON will get there early because part of that is to do a turnover, and then the rest of the platoon. I don't think I heard of that. Yeah, we call it ADVON. Got it. So so that kind of adds a little more time sometimes on guys' deployment. OICs for the most part, platoon chiefs, like human guys in some cases. If you're a medic that has like sniper, breacher, qual, like a bunch of different quals, for sure you're part of that ADVON to get there because now you're replacing another team that's coming back for the most part, you know, to fill that space. So, yeah, man.
Are you allowed to say what team you were on? Like what number, or is that no go?
I can't. I was on West Coast teams.
Okay. What are they, even or odd?
So West Coast teams are odd.
Always forget.
East Coast teams are even.
Got it.
Yeah.
And so you're in the Middle East, like, because again, we've kind of touched on this, but you're doing intel work.
Yeah.
But then you're also doing, like, how much of it was like out there in the field doing kind of covert source work versus you're kitted up doing missions to kicking down doors and doing your thing?
A part of it is. So I'll take one deployment as an example.
Okay.
Right. So for this particular deployment I was on, we did what's called vampire ops. So we slept. We went to bed like around 8, 9, depending on like 10 in the morning. Woke up like around 5, 6 o'clock in the afternoon. And then like for me, like I was doing my intel stuff. Like I was meeting with sources. Like pretty much like right after I had breakfast, right? I call it breakfast. Like I'm meeting with sort of, and I had an interpreter that I worked through for the most part. So it's not just me, it's me and an interpreter. And then also sometimes I would go in with another guy. And so you do that. there's more to it because you have your team meetings every day as well, which is a part of it as well. And then route that information up the chain. After you do your meetings, write your report, send that up. And again, I'm just taking a random day, but one meeting is not going to lead to an operation, right? It's like sometimes it's 2 meetings, sometimes it's 3 meetings, right? Because part of it is like getting that information and then vetting that information and get other information to make sure it's accurate. It's not so you can't have a source come in and be like, so and so's at that house. Like, all right, we're gonna go take down that house. It's like, all right, so and so's at that house. All right, cool.
You got to double. Yeah.
Let me try and get somebody else to vet, and then get somebody else to vet that, and then once that information set up the chain of command. Again, there's more to it, but I'm sublimating it for the sake of not trying to get into all the details. Then an op can get approved, right? DA, we call it DA, direct action mission, can get approved, right? Or a recon mission, or whatever the case, whatever the mission is required, right? And so I would do that, and then we would go in DAs. We would go out the door like at, I don't know, midnight, 1 in the morning, 2 in the morning, when everybody's asleep, and then come back, and that was the day. That was the cycle. You know what I mean? Like, build the intelligence, and when we have it all and everything's been vetted, we're not going out every single night. Yeah. Right? Because it's a process.
Yes.
Right? And then there's there's information we're getting that's not coming from me, right? There's like maybe the battle space commander is like, there's a target over here. You got to go hit this target now. Boom, boom, boom. And that's a different situation.
Do you have another HUMINT guy on your team with you?
Yeah,
or
yeah,
you, okay.
Yeah,
so you're working in teams in this part as well.
Yeah. Like it's you have 2 to 3. Well, I don't want to say that. Like in the situations I've been in, it's been about 2 to 3.
Got it. Yeah. So obviously you have the repository of like sources that you are inheriting that came before you, but what did you make the sources who you identified and ended up bringing on? Did you usually get those through the sources that you already had, or what would you look for in people to make them a source? Like, was there a type of a target kind of person that you always wanted to have in your pocket?
Yeah, for me, for the most part, when I got in country, the last thing you want to do is, in my opinion, is have a source. Say, I know a guy. You need to bring him on. Because, you don't want to do that. I mean, because that part of that motivation is going to be money. You never want to work with somebody for the money, right? You want them to have some type of buy-in, outside of the financial piece to it. And so, so the pool that I got was always pools that were already kind of established for the most part, except for there was one deployment I was on where, like, we got there and trying to be very vague about this.
Take your time.
But there wasn't a source pool for the most part, but the group of guys was vetted because they were tied to a government that was trying to help us out with what we're doing. That's the vaguest way I think I could explain it, right? So it wasn't like I'm going out in town and trying to find somebody or anything like that. Be like, or try to hear a story of a guy who family got murdered by Al Qaeda, and it's like, all right, I'm gonna go have a conversation with that guy and say, hey, you want a chance to get back? I've never found myself in that position. I've always either inherited a stable and then got rid of guys. Like, there were times when I was just like, yo, this dude hasn't performed, or this dude is like BSing, or this dude's motivation has completely changed. He's just in it for the money, and then cut ties. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So on the mission side themselves, though, once you actually would be approved to, you have enough intelligence, because it sounds like your end of it, you're the guys who are determining a good amount or number of the missions, percentage of the missions that end up happening, because you're kind of the tip of the spear. Is that fair to say?
I want to say good. Are you talking about human guys across the board? Or are you talking about?
Yeah, across the board for the various teams.
It's a piece. It's a piece in the puzzle. You know what I mean? Because you could have all the meetings and collect all the information as you want, but if other pieces don't connect, there's no mission that's happening. If that makes sense. So it's like, it's just a piece. That's the best way I can explain it. Because you could be getting intelligence from, because what if a government agency like has some information, key information, and then that information gets vetted, then you're going out the door. Like you didn't really have the playing that role.
That's kind of, that's what my common sense was telling me. And then when I was listening to you talk, I don't know if it's different like team to team. It sounded like a lot of the missions were happening because of yours, and I'm sure some were, but like there's a balance of it.
It's a balance. It's a balance. A lot of it is not happening just because of me, or just because of my effort, or just because of the effort of the guys in the shop. It's different things. It's even meeting with meeting with like somebody who's high up in an area, like a sheikh or something like that. You know what I mean? Have a sit down with them. So it's definitely, all the onus doesn't fall solely on human guys, and it never fell solely on me. It's a like I mentioned earlier, it's a team. And so it's like I'm just bringing a piece to the table, and hopefully that piece lines up with what's already been brought to the table, or hopefully whatever's been brought, or vice versa. If that makes sense. And that's just that's the way it plays out.
I'm doing math in my head because you were telling me earlier you left the teams January 2016.
Yeah.
And you did like 8.5 years in the teams.
8 years. Yeah.
So you're getting in 08-ish, 09-ish?
No, I joined the Navy in 2002.
Right, but I'm saying you're getting into the SEALs.
Oh, yeah. 2007, 2008.
Right, so this is now where you're going over there and you're seeing combat and these situations. Yeah. And I'm just thinking about, like, this is now 5 years post-Iraq, 7 years post going into Afghanistan. Yeah. There's instability over there in the Middle East. What was that like? Like, what was that time period like? It seems like it would have been, especially when you were coming in, a time where the morale was maybe at like an all-time low from
the military morale.
Yeah.
Well, I would say for our community, guys don't go through hell. Go through buds to sit in Guam, bro. Yeah, you know what I mean. Like that was like the I don't want to say punch, but that was like the anticipation of finding out where you were going. And knowing that there's a chance that after you finish this workup, your platoon could go to the Philippines or go to Guam or go to Bahrain and just sit for 6 months, that's frightening. You
guys want the action.
You go through training and all of this stuff and all of this workup because you want to do a job. That's what you train for. You know what I mean? Like, and so it's like in our community, it's just like getting after it. That's why we want to be where the party is, if that makes sense.
But maybe I could have been a little more clear on that question. Like, what in your opinion, were there things in, and again, we're being vague with exact places. It's just how it is from an intelligence perspective here. But like, were there things in the Middle East that you identified as, oh, this is not going to get better? Because I'm thinking, this is a few years before ISIS. Like, did you kind of see something like an ISIS coming?
I can't say that I mean, to me, I think that I can't say that I saw ISIS coming. I can say that I knew that I felt as though something would fill the void. I just didn't know what that something would be at some point, right? So if we're talking about Iraq, or if we're talking about Afghanistan, if we're talking about, other places, like Taliban swooped in and filled that void, right?
Yes.
Took over. ISIS swooped in and filled that void, once Americans pulled out for the most part, right?
Yes.
And so it was always in the back of everyone's, I would say most people's head, that like, and that was one of the reasons why I think the part of the goal, and I want to be careful because I don't want to speak to what was going on in the minds of generals and admirals because I don't know, but I think that maybe one of the goals was to try and stabilize it and strengthen the governments or people in power to the best of our ability, so that whoever did come fill that void wouldn't be successful.
Yeah, it's interesting, and hindsight's 2020 now, but we're great at a lot of things as a country. One of the things we don't seem to be the best at, and in fairness to us, I think most countries aren't good at it from a power perspective, but like, spreading the democracy the right way or getting the right people in charge. You look at it, that just seems to be, I mean, you mentioned it yourself, the Afghanistan example is phenomenal for all the wrong reasons because you spent 20 years and yet same ending. You know, it's kind of like a loop.
Yeah. And sad.
It is sad.
But what can you do, man?
Yeah. So I mean, I have so many other questions in there, but we got to get you up to New York soon.
Yeah.
But before we do that, like when you left the teams, I think what's going to be happening here, I'm just looking at the clock, like we probably are going to have an episode and a half here. We're going to have an episode on your like career and your childhood and everything. And then I'll probably put out an hour, 10 minutes that we did on the human trafficking as its own, which I think would be cool to do, like as its own episode. But, you know, without going into the things we already covered on human trafficking, if this one's coming before the other one, when you got out of the teams, like why did you leave? What was the motivation?
My
there?
first son was born in 2014. My second son was born in 2015. And I looked at those boys. And though I wanted to stay in, I wanted to do 20 years, but I looked at my kids and I was just like, I want to be home. It wasn't like I was scared of dying or anything like that. For me, it was just like, I want to be home. Because even like outside of deployments, like workup, you're gone a lot.
Yeah.
You know, you're going out to Utah, you're going out to Nyland, you're going out to, you know, Mojave Desert, you're going out to all these places and you come back for a week, then you got to go here and then you come in and it's a lot. And I just knew that I got it out of my system, you know, and I needed to be home with my boys and my wife and kids. And so it was a tough decision, but that was ultimately the reason why I decided to pop smoke.
It sounds like you jumped right into things.
Yeah.
As far as like you mentioned, you got the call from the organization Sacramento, started focusing on some of the human trafficking.
But I was in
things.
grad school when I got out. Actually, like when I was I got my bachelor's, you know, I want to say 2 years before I got out.
You went to college while you were in there.
Yeah, I want to say like a year and a half or 2 years. I finished quick. My bachelor's really, really quick. I remember my counselors were just like, "You're crazy," because I just stacked classes. I was just like, "I'm taking as many classes as I can to finish this early." And then I was in grad school getting my master's in organizational strategy. Like I could have got going the MBA route, but there's so many people with MBAs that I didn't want to do the MBA route. So I did the same business school, University of Charleston, West Virginia, but I went the organizational strategy route. And I was doing that because I was going to go in business consulting full time because my brother-in-law is a YPO guy. You ever familiar with YPO?
YPO?
It stands for Young Presidents Organization. In order to be in, you have to become or be a millionaire and billionaire under the age of 40. There's chapters all around the world. And these guys control a lot of the wealth, and women control a lot of the wealth around the world. And so my brother-in-law is a YPOer. He's part of the Toronto chapter.
Sounds like the Illuminati.
But the good people. But he was getting me a lot of consulting jobs. And I didn't want to just rely on, I was a SEAL, and, you know, so let's go charge that hill, you know, be a team player. I wanted to have the education, the theory behind it as well. So that's what I was planning on doing full time after I got out in January 2016. And that's why I was in grad school. Did you have any,
I mean, you were in the teams, you did some really serious shit. Did you have any mental struggles or something coming home? Did some of it stay with you?
I would, there's always going to be a little something residual of the stuff that we do and the stuff that most guys do when they've gone in combat. So for sure, I think that I found a good process for myself to keep the demons at bay. You know what I mean? To keep my focus. My faith is a big part of who I am, you know, and prayer and relying on God and that's my center, you know, especially having this realization or belief that everything happens for a reason and everything happens just the way it's supposed to happen. And that alone is comforting to me, especially when things go bad And I've had so many bad things happen to me, even like in the last few months. But just knowing that good will come out of it or has come out of it, you know what I mean? And so I would say that faith has been a big part of keeping my mind clean, keeping me focused, and keeping me, on the right path.
Did you have that as a kid at all?
No.
When did that come in for you?
When I was 26. So I had fluctuated between atheism and agnosticism up until the time I was 26.
What did it?
I had a rock bottom moment. And I tried all kinds of different things to fix me and to fix my situation, and nothing I tried worked. And, my brother, ever since he was in college, he'd been a Christian, and he would always tell me, he said, Remi, when, not if, but when you hit rock bottom, just remember to cry out to Jesus. And I remember making fun of him and mocking him and doing that all, just like, you're stupid, like, get away from me with all that crap. And when I hit my bottom moment, man, and mentally my brain was screwed.
Did you talk about that bottom moment already? Was that something we discussed?
No.
Are you comfortable talking about that, or?
Yeah.
What was it?
It was a combination of things, man. It was, in short, I treated a lot of people poorly. My mom, my brother, a girl who I was going to marry, you know what I mean? And I went out to the wilderness, long story short, had the chance to really reflect on my life and really reflect on the decisions that I made, and I didn't like what I saw. And it crushed me. It crushed me to think the things that I did to my mom. Talked about stealing her engagement ring, stealing money from her as a kid. Like, all of these things started coming to my forefront, things that happened. There's certain triggers. I remember when I was at the Lee Strasberg Theater and Film Institute.
Oh, shit. You went there?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
And there was a girl there, Brad knows, named Jamala, awesome actress. And she did a scene that triggered something in her that really took her to a dark place where she was just crying hysterically. Yeah. She ran out of the building, and I ran out there and I chased her. And she was hyper. She could barely breathe. She was just out of it. And that one scene, that one thing in that scene, I can't remember quite what it was, triggered something that happened to her in her past in a strong way. And that's what happened to me. This one instance of being able to reflect triggered all of these things, what I did to my mom, things that I did years ago and I had thought about, but never quite like this. Things I did to my mom, things that I did to my brother, how I used to disrespect him and not honor him, and then things I did to this girl. I mean, there's a lot more to the story, but I broke my leg in jump school, couldn't walk for 3 months. And in that 3 months, this girl, she dropped everything to take care of me. And I had been so angry at the world that I had poured out all that anger onto her. And she didn't deserve it. And once I was able to walk, I left. I had been cheating on her anyway. But once I was able to walk, I left her. And I remember her crumbling to the floor and just saying, "How could you do this to me?" And I said, "Get out of my apartment. Why are you still sitting on my floor?" And then she got up, cried, and left. And she had given up so much for me. And I eventually got back with her, but still cheating on her, and never physically abusive or anything. I never put a hand on her or anything like that, but just putting her down. You know what I mean? And so, again, having that moment where I'm reflecting on all the things I did to my mom, reflecting on all the things I did to my brother, reflecting on all the things I did to other people, reflecting on what I did to this woman I met, that crushed me. And to think that I couldn't go back and fix it was horrifying. Because, again, going back to what I said before, my dad's mind is that what I inherited from my dad was this ability to see a problem or see a door and figure out a way to fix that problem. That's the way my mind has always been wired. Everything that I face, everything that I do, and I think that that's what helps me as a writer. Whether it's a screenwriter writing books, it's like, this ability, this challenge to be able to find a way out of a corner that I might have written myself into. And that was the first time in my life that I felt like I had created this monster and I couldn't fix it. And I couldn't go back and fix all of the things that I did to all of the people that said they loved me. And I tell you what, that is at least for me, that was a very horrifying thing for me, to a point where I was just like, man, I don't even want to live anymore. You know what I mean? I can't live with the stuff that I did. And that was when, I took my brother's advice. It was just like, yo, I don't know if you're real, Jesus, but help me. And I can't tell you that things changed right away, but I could tell you that I started to feel peace. And I felt hope. I felt a hope that I had never felt ever in my life. And I felt like the father that I had been chasing my whole life had been there. And he had been affirming me. He had been trying to guide me, but I was just not paying attention. And then in that, I felt like my father, God, was like, I'm here, I'm with you, I love you, you are my child, and we're gonna walk through this together, and you're gonna be a different person. And that's how it all happened. My wife and I were talking the other night, and we were talking about our kids, and I was actually telling her the story about the kids at the barbecue running into the street.
Yeah.
I was telling her that. This was last night. And she started telling me a story about a girl at the playground whose kid was getting picked on, but the parent wasn't doing anything. And then another mother went up to the kid who was picking on the kid and said, stop picking on the kid. And then the mother of the kid who was picking on the kids went up to the mother who corrected the kid and said, you're not supposed to be correcting my kid, blah, 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 blah. And a story came to mind that I've never told my wife. I've totally forgot, because it came to mind because this situation happened at the same park that the lady shared the story with my kid. And I told my wife, I was like, dude, when Caden was 5 years old, I remember he was at that same park and this bully was just bullying kids. And he had like another kid with him that was following him around. And he looked at my son, Caden, and he kind of tapped the other kid like, yeah, we're going to get him. We're going to like go push. And I saw the kid like beelining towards my son and getting ready to hit him, push him, do whatever he was doing to the other kid. And I was sitting on the bench and I stood up and all I said was, hey, that's my son. And the kid looked at me and then ran away. And that's what that moment was for me, that period when I was 26. It was like God said, hey, you're my son.
That's
and
heavy.
and yo, that's when I started looking at people differently. That's when it was like, life isn't about me anymore.
Am I ever so slightly off here if I say that's when you were then coming back around to get officially into the SEALs?
No,
like,
I was
you were already in at that
yeah,
point?
Yeah,
because you were out, then you went back.
I was already in. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
and thank God that it happened, because I know guys who they, as SEALs, and still friends with them, and where that trident can really, the power that comes with it, the accolades that come with it, it's not good at times. You know what I mean? Like,
what do you mean by that?
No, in my opinion, no human being was created to be worshipped by another human being. You know what I mean? And I think, people who do get that praise, that worship, that admiration, it can affect it. If it's not deflected, I think it could lead to bad things. Like, think about people with celebrities or rock stars, Kurt Cobain, all that drugs, trying to escape, trying to find themselves, and
Whitney.
all of these people, Whitney, like all these, and then they end up losing their lives because they're put up on this pedestal and worshipped, and it's hard to handle, and they're trying to escape. drugs and all of these other things. And when you're a SEAL, you know how it is, how people look up to SEALs, you know what I mean?
Yes.
It's like, and then when you're in the military, it's like you go to the base that's not the SEAL base, you go to NAB or go to another base, and you have that trident on, everybody stops and they look and like, oh crap, like you're a SEAL. And it's like that can build up pride within the person, you know what I mean? And there's been guys who, you know, it's been too much power, you know, and going out, getting drunk, fighting, beating people, just a lot of crazy stuff. And so I know that if I didn't if God didn't find me, I don't want to say I found God, but if God didn't find me, then I would have been very destructive as I went on. And I don't think I could have, I know I would have been very destructive.
Well, I'm glad you had that moment, man.
Yeah.
I mean, it's clear. I got the chills listening to some of that. That was pretty awesome to have that on camera too and share that for people. Because even not being a SEAL, people can relate to different struggles in their own life 100%. Or things where they stop looking in the mirror or, you know, have a moment where things aren't clear. And it's very interesting that you looked at that experience as also, I forget, you said it way better than I'm going to remember it, but you're like, it was like, your dad, who you were always chasing, he was there the whole time.
Oh, there the whole time. Yeah.
That's beautiful, man. That's
and everything, there's all these different connections, man. And looking at Tiana and what she did for me, the perfect timing of her being there, the Marine recruiter not being there, but her being there. And
that's an angel right there.
Yeah, man. So it's just, you know, I've been blessed, man, and I can't take credit for everything I am and where I'm at today because I'm an idiot.
I don't think you're giving yourself enough credit, man. You're doing some pretty amazing things. But all right, guys, that brings us to the end of part 1 of my sit down with Remi. And part 2, as I think I've already mentioned, is going to be completely different. For about an hour and 10 or 15 minutes, Remi took us inside the dark underbelly of some of the worldwide black markets that he has investigated since leaving the Navy SEALs, and you are not going to want to miss this one. Once again, we'll be putting this one out in the next 2 to 3 days, so keep your eyes out on YouTube and Spotify. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel so that you don't miss it, and leave a like and comment on this video before you leave. Thank you to everyone who has already done that. That said, you know what it is. Give it a thought. Get back to me. Peace.